great attitude.
Okay.
Nice. I watched that the other day for the first time. Like,
So, Stephen, are we doing UC Extension now?
Yep. He's up.
Okay, let's go.
Go ahead and start, sir.
I'm getting this idea that he's not hearing us.
Can you hear us?
We can hear him, right? John.
So, John, are you ready?
Yes, I am. I think you need to let Shauna LaBrush in do as a panelist who's the office manager, so if there's specific questions about the details of the budget, she'd be nice to have on.
Johanna, is she in?
Looks like she's in just now. So. She's muted. Don't see her. She has her camera working. There she is.
We're good.
Okay, well, are you ready for us to start?
Yes.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank the board for accommodating my weird schedule and having us be able to come on here in the afternoon. When you get to my age, there's certain things that you end up having to go to UCSF and for, and so it's kind of was something I couldn't postpone, so I apologize for any inconvenience that's caused. Basically, I have some really excellent news about the Water Quality, Quantity, and Climate Change Advisor. Our committee has met and interviewed 3 candidates. We have 2 top candidates. First one, at some time here in the immediate future, will be in negotiations for an offer. And so hopefully depending on their availability, they'll be on board here maybe in July or August, not sure. So that's really good news, especially after having listened to the special districts budget hearing. That particular person will work closely with Phil in the future, I can see, and as somebody that will be a direct link from our office to the special district's water. So, and perhaps be of assistance from a research and education outreach standpoint. So that's exciting news. So as you've seen from our report, we have now had our Bird Fest person on board, and her activity has done several talks and getting to know people in Lake County. That's Brianna, and also Dr. Clemson Concalves, the diversified ag instructor, is really starting to gear up his programs. To update you, he has gotten 2 additional new grants that he will be continuing some of the work that Rachel's done and actually adding to that project in the pomology area. So they're up and running. As you can see also, Dr. Mike Jones, our forestry advisor, who's been involved with one of your committees too, but in addition has been really working with the prescribed burn associations in Lake County, and that's continuing quite a bit. So we're really excited about these new people. So as you can see, as a result of that, these new folks coming on, one of the things now we'd have to recalculate the 5-to-1 ratio that we typically use for what UC puts in for what the county provides us in funding. I think it's going to be much, much higher with the salary and benefits coming from these other advisors. We also have, thanks in part to the county, been able to hire another community education specialist in the 4-H program. Her name is Jean Gulgyar, and she's been on board for a little while, and we're expecting great things. She has a master's degree, and so we're going to see quite a bit more outreach in that in the 4-H program as well. So our budget reflects the having onboarded these new advisors, and also projects a little bit with the potential of another advisor serving Lake County. And so we're looking now, our biggest change in the budget really is adding the agricultural technician, the permanent funded position that will help our advisors and to some extent our CES with a person that can assist with a lot of the field work that is done on site in Lake County, and also assist with educational outreach programs to where our advisors can go out and leverage his position for additional grants so that we can bring more research and education from the University of California to Lake County. So that's the largest thing. In the past, this is a position that Lake County has had a long, long time ago, and we've had it on our kind of wish list, but now that we've added all these extra advisors, we're seeing we really need to have that. There's a little bit of a slight increase, I believe, in our travel too, just because the new advisors tend to travel a lot more than older advisors do, and so we're trying to cover that expense as well as do the outreach and maintain the programs. In the past, what we did was we had the special extra help, and so we're just now trying to make this now into a more permanent position where we have the long-term connection with this person and the new advisors coming in. And so some of the funds that we've had for special extra help now will be in this permanent position. Basically, our budget is pretty simple. It's mostly 90% of it's probably in salaries of our permanent staff. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Supervisor Spatier?
Yeah, just quickly, and I'm sorry if I missed it. I know you talked about a 4-H CES, Community Education Supervisor. What can we do to help for the advisor, or is there somebody kind of on deck already? Because I see that you're looking for one. Just want to see what we can do, because I think that program is probably one of the better programs that we have in our county, especially for the future of agriculture, to make sure that we continue to attract youth to that.
Yeah, the CE supervisor position is still on hold. We had some failed searches on that. I'm also hoping that we will have another call for positions here in the not too distant future, and I will certainly write up a justification and submit for a 4-H youth advisor that would serve both counties. Most likely it would be housed in Lake County at this point, because we're running out of room for people over in Mendocino County. So that's something that's on my radar to progress with. And the time comes for that. It's always wonderful to have a letter of support from the Board of Supervisors in the counties that say, hey, this is a much needed position. So that's one area that could certainly help. And, you know, the continuing partnership that we have on funding the CES specialists, now Jean and Julie is still on the higher back. We just re-upped her for a little bit longer. So there's a good transition of information between the two of them. And so with the county providing us some support dollars for that, that helps us tremendously, because those are the people who are really on the ground with the actual 4-H clubs. And we also get a little bit of help from you for our Master Gardener program, which we're really excited about now that Clemson is on board. He will be directing the Master Gardener programs in both counties. And so that's going to be, we're going to see that invigorated with an advisor overseeing it. So we're kind of excited about the prospects. But those kinds of assistance are always very, very welcome. It extends us. We take what you give us and we try to multiply it in anything we do.
Yeah, and I think we would love to provide that support, and maybe even when there's a call for applicants for the youth advisor, we can maybe also help out with the press release of our own if you bring that to us. I'm sure that we would be able to support that. I do appreciate Dr. Gonsalves, I believe is how you say it.
Concalves.
It's got a little tail on the C, so I believe that's a C. But
I'll
anyways,
defer. I'm
Clemson's
Swedish,
easier.
so my Spanish is not very good.
But Clemson is much
It's
easier.
Portuguese.
But I do appreciate that his expertise and just that the idea of diversifying our agriculture and things like that. I know I've had conversations with him, and my feelings are I'm going to continue those conversations and keep learning more from him. I do have a question to my colleagues. I don't know enough from the perspective of, let's say, the ag advisory or the tree mortality. Is there anything that needs to be changed in the sense of the support that we need, or is what's here doable and usable for what our needs have been and continue to be?
Yep, it's fine.
Okay.
And Mike Jones is always available.
Yep.
A great resource, and I see in here too, they're recruiting a water quality climate. So I think it all ties into exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, that position is the one that I mentioned right at the start, that we have some really outstanding, we had 19 applications for that position, and our search committee narrowed it down to 4. We had one drop out for personal reasons, but that was not, on paper, wasn't the absolutely top candidate. Our top candidate was in and interviewed very, very well. So my fingers are crossed that they're going to be in the offering stage, and the negotiations for that person to join us will be done quickly.
All right, we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Supervisor
Yeah,
Green.
it's going to be the future, I think. And
Yep.
And again, this person will not only be dovetailing with the special districts, but also the actual water districts themselves, and then providing support to the specialty advisors in their areas of work too. We are going to have, interestingly enough, I'm on a second search committee that will be bringing a water and soils advisor, but their territory is going to be Napa, Sonoma, Marin, and Mendocino. But I see our water quality, quantity, and climate change advisor, that's a natural cohort for those two people to work together. So I can see cross-county relationships developing with them too.
Great. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think the ask is appropriate right now. I do see room for growth, and I'd like us to be open for possible growth later on in September, if appropriate. And I just want to point out in the narrative, for example, some exciting work being done in terms of the Clear Lake hitch response by Mr. Chen from Integrated Vineyard Systems. More than 25 temperature inversion towers have been installed across the county, basically to study whether there's any opportunity to shift from groundwater pumping for frost protection to use of wind machines in certain microclimates, which is a very important first start, and I'm sure the Farm Bureau had some hand in that. But I think there's more that can be done too. Frost-resilient crops, are there varietals, just as they're studying right now, heat and drought resilience in vineyards. We may need to add frost resilience to the research portfolio, and UC is where research happens, and we have so much good going on in this county that does present research opportunities. I did speak earlier about some opportunities in cannabis and hemp research, and I understand there are some difficulties in funding, but I do want to point out the Cannabis and Hemp Research Center at UC Davis exists, has worked out through its special arrangements any difficulties that might be attached to any research opportunities. We have had multiple research subjects pop up over the years here in Lake County, including the potential of taint from terpene odors onto other crops, including grapes. So I'm very excited to see this very long narrative, because it really shows the big portfolio you do. You're like the little extension that could. And yet I feel like I want to ask you to do more in terms of being open to cannabis and hemp research projects, if only because we are a cultivating county. We're a good research county just for that. And if only because I think the ongoing Clear Lake Hits response will create additional opportunities for research and the support function that UC offers to our local agricultural producers. So I'm very proud of what I see in this narrative so far, and I want to encourage you to keep doing more. And if that includes potential staff ask or additional funding or just help letters of support to get you some additional UC Davis funding through the Cannabis and Hemp Research Center, we can do that. And I do want to point out also that depending on what your analysis is, we did just staff up a little bit in water resources with 2 new positions for the CHI response. And if you find in your own internal workings that you do need a little bit of additional support, I hope you'll feel free to ask us for it.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And again, like I say, when we get this person on board, I think if it's the one that the committee ranked first, I think he will be very pleased with this candidate. I see just the same thing I've seen in both the hiring of Mike Jones, the hiring of Chris Chen, and the hiring of Clemson. So, and also even now in the hiring with Jean. I mean, we have a potential inside track because she does meet the minimum requirements for 4-H youth advisor down the road. That would be great to, should that position become available for her to apply. And I've already had side discussions with her about doing so. So I think that could be really exciting times for all of us. And as long as I'm here, I'm not shy about asking, because the worst that you can say is no. So.
Okay, do we have any public input? Johanna, anyone in Zoom? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board for action.
I would love to move to approve Budget Unit 6131 for the UC Cooperative Extension.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Now we'll move into the board section. So this will be run by admin.
I was waiting for you to introduce me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
She was talking to me.
I was talking to you.
I don't know if they're still waiting, you can let them know.
So are we excused? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, did you vote on that?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
We had a motion and a second. We did it all.
I
Johanna's already got
apologize.
it written down, we're moved on.
Well, good afternoon, board. We'll start with Budget Unit 1011, page D-1, Board of Supervisors, and I will be brief. The Board of Supervisors is the appointing and legislative body that serves the County of Lake residents, businesses, and visitors. I'd like to include some highlights that the board has achieved this year. One is approving the climate resiliency position, the housing and economic positions, which will lay the groundwork for long-term planning efforts and resiliency efforts. The board also supported the countywide Honoring All Voices Community Vision Forum Series. The board proclaimed a state of an emergency to enhance action to protect the Chai Clear Lake Hitch. We also advanced efforts to secure funding to address Lake County's tree mortality emergency, and we also approved the creation of the public defender position. Let's see, and we also established Juneteenth as a County of Lake holiday. The work, I believe the board will continue is bringing and reimagining Vision 2028. And that will include economic development, housing, resiliency, just to name a few things. I'm open for any questions or comment from the board.
Do we have a timeline on when we're going to start working on the Vision 2028 again?
We can start this fall if the board would like. We haven't discussed it yet, but we can put that down on our calendar.
Okay, I think as long as we start it before the end of the year,
Yeah,
don't have to finish it. But
right,
just because this is the mid-year mark.
right.
Okay. Yes?
And what's the timing? I know that part of the economic development efforts in your department was to also eventually come to a strategic planning. To me, that's kind of a mix of reviewing the vision goals and the objectives within that create the strategic planning. Does that timeline match, or is that kind of separate now if we're pushing for Vision 2028 to be reviewed?
It is. I think we're going to initiate some discussion in mid-July because, as you know, Ben has been meeting and greeting with different organizations and businesses. He even met with Dr. Eiler, and what I'd like for him to do is bring back his thoughts and assessments to the board in mid-July in preparation for more discussion in the fall about the strategic plan and what path the board would like us to take, given all the options he believes we should consider.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, we can move on.
Then before we move on, this is where a potential fix may occur. Just so your board is aware, prior to 23-24, we allocated $100,000 per district for cannabis discretionary revenues. In this current budget, we have $50,000 additional per district. And we can talk more about that when we get to Budget Unit 1072 in cannabis, but wanted to bring that up since that's a change.
Okay, I think we'll talk about it when we get to cannabis then.
Right. Moving on?
Yes?
Yes, thank you very much. The next item is Administration, Budget Unit 1012, page D-6. The County Administrative Office provides administrative and management functional support for the Board of Supervisors, department heads, and this organization, and also provides assistance, walk-in assistance to those in a community that are in need or have questions. We have a lot of things that we did and accomplished this year, but I'm just going to highlight a few. I think, again, I already mentioned the public defender, the economic development, housing, but I also would like to mention that you know, we assisted with many others in improving and updating our webpage, and also with we are targeting more of our public communications for telling our own story on behalf of the board and the community. Let's see, I think those are the major ones that we did. We're successful in getting 2 more projects funded by the community project funding from Congressman Thompson. I think those are the highest highlights that we have. The goals are, of course, to support the board in moving forward in completing those tasks or following those guidelines and principles within Vision 2028, and then anything else that should come before us, because as you know, our life isn't static, and as much as we plan, there's always something that comes up. So, and community resiliency, I forgot to mention Terry Logsden's hire as the Chief Climate Resiliency Officer, and she has done a lot in her short 6 months here. I have a 2-page outline, but I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll be more than happy to share it to you at a later date. Any questions or comments?
I have a couple. So with the grant that the Risk Reduction Authority just received, we'll be adding a support position to Terry.
Yes.
And what, I can't remember, was that 2 years, 3 years? What's the grant funding for that, the timeline?
I believe it's 3.
3, okay. So it doesn't quite cover her whole term, but it is significant.
But again, with the award, and I think there's going to be more than 1 round of awards that we will watch for and reapply.
Yep.
As long as we can demonstrate effort and deliverables, I think we'll be successful.
And that position will be added during the September hearings. It's not currently in our allocation.
Right, because we just found out. Okay. And then going back to telling our story, one of the things that I've been thinking about and I discussed with Vice Chair Simon was a way that we could communicate by district what the goals are, what we're working on, a little less formal than our press releases, because our press releases kind of tell what we've accomplished and not kind of what's leading up to it and what's in progress. And what I was thinking is a monthly subscription email for each district where we could either write it ourselves, although staff would prefer that we submit bullet points of just a few things that have happened, highlights for the month, so that we have that ability to communicate with our constituents if they choose to sign up for a newsletter. And I don't think that it, speaking with staff, I don't think it's a big time suck, but I feel like we could do better with communicating what's happening district by district. For me, my district is 3 very different sections, and I often find people have no idea what's going on because, you know, there may be a press release every couple of months about a big project, but just the continuity and I'll make an example, what's going on with tree mortality. We have a lot of things that we're working on. We have a lot of small announcements to make, and then the other thing is the evacuation grant progression that, you know, we've been working on that for well, we got awarded a year ago. We applied for it a year and a half ago, but there's lots of projects embedded in that. We have a lot of departmental work, and I think that that's a better way for us to individually tell our stories about the work that we're doing and how we communicate with our constituents. So I just want to bring that up and see what you all thought about that.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Go ahead.
I think that the idea of communicating is always good. I don't mind setting up a situation that it's easy on our site to be able to log in and say, I want to subscribe to something. But I would suggest that's on us to create that and not ask staff to do more. I want to see staff working for the betterment of the county, not the betterment of individual board of supervisors. I think we have capabilities to write our own. It's just a newsletter. It's not like it's law. It's not like it's, and if you struggle to write, find somebody in your community who can review what you're writing. But I think that at this moment in time, I would prefer staff spend time on things that are going to create action rather than just communicate when we can do that on our own.
Well, I will respond to that because that was my first thought. But we have to run it through staff. And so it actually takes them longer to review. That's what I was told. Then they have to review it. And then maybe edit it or change it. Because if it's going to be going out, they would like the opportunity to review it and have their hands in it. So originally, that was my thought. We could write it ourselves and submit it, but that's actually staff's request.
And I would suggest that we all get an opportunity to speak to the public, and we do not pass by staff what we're going to say, and whether it's verbally said or written, it's our personal opinion. It is not the opinion of the board, and that just signed off as such.
It's
Again,
less of a personal opinion. It's showing the work that all departments are doing and staff is doing. It's not our personal opinion and our personal message. It's a report out on what's happening in the district. And so if you've got special districts project or a public works project, we want to be able to show the constituents in that district, these are the things that's happening. It's not a message from Jessica. Like, that's not what it is. In my mind, it's a way to show, you know, more frequently what's happening and things what's in progress, rather than my opinions or any supervisor's opinions or thoughts.
I'll weigh in and just let you know I'm not really taking a side on this. I'm just going to highlight both of your points and say how it will, how I see this as this will help for my town halls. I'll be ready for each town hall because this will be written down. But I do see, you know, I kind of do this for the town halls already as it is. And I think too, another thing that would help with this is that touching base with the directors, like you said. But I do understand the staff time, because I know sometimes I will email staff and directors. I try to go through the directors, and I know it's burdensome at times. So I hear that, but we have to weigh what do we gain from doing this, and how much does it help versus how much it drains, if that makes sense. So I don't mind looking further into it. Either way, I know I kind of do that at town halls anyhow. But I mean, this would just be a good boilerplate for me to read at each meeting and answer questions. But, you know, I just wanted to weigh in that way.
Well, and that's how I came to it, actually, because I go to the collaborative council meetings and I give an update on everything that I'm working on. But that is 1/3 of my district. And the other 2 areas of my district do not have town halls. And so I don't have that way to sit down and give that report out.
I think another hard, or another challenge, and not hard thing, but the challenge is that many of the folks that really want to know don't have internet access or, you know, have that type of availability. And then it gets down to mail outs at times, you know, or flyers at times. And how burdensome is that? You know, like I'm talking about just when I give updates, if they're not at the town hall, how else are they going to get that information? You know, because you're mentioning websites, you know what I mean? Things like that. Is this something that's going to go to the media as well? Or how is it, or is it going to be on the county website? And again, how does the folks that don't even engage in the internet, how are they going to get these updates as well? I'm just throwing these out there.
Well, that's a good point. Well, I had considered it to be an email, and then and then we could have it embedded in the county site. But we could do, we could post it somewhere in the district, just print one copy and post it. I mean, my district doesn't have a county public building, so again, that's a difficulty for my district. But I just see this area where we could improve, and I'm happy to write it myself. I'm just sharing what staff said to me, that they would rather take the time and write it themselves. So, I mean, I could go either way, but I'm wondering if you two have a thought.
You know, what we did in the past, I think we called it the good of the chair or message from the board. We did that for a little while. Year after each board meeting, we sent something out, you know. So we had a small iteration of that, you know, as you're saying, telling our stories, we were moving forward. I can't remember the exact term we called it. Messages from the board, the chair, I think that's what it was. And we did it for a while, and then the pandemic hit, and, you know, we didn't do that anymore. So kind of broke down everything we did at the meeting, kind of get a message out there. So we did it for a little while. So I think in that concept, obviously, yeah, we don't have town halls in every district, but you can create a town hall in each district.
Well, I mean,
Ask EJ.
That coming from you?
Yeah, no,
Well, here ain't got one.
I floated the idea, but
you guys,
that's on them.
you know, for me, you know where I am with email and everything else. So I'm not going to be writing paragraphs very often. Probably everybody who's been working with me is, I'll talk to you all day long. I got it all on my mind, and I'll do that stuff. I don't do the Facebook stuff either. I don't do that. I try to get out there and sit in the, I was at an individual's home last night. I got an issue. So, you know, that's the way I like to do it. I see it's, you know, some type of opportunity to tell our story from the board. I think that's important. If we could pull some of that stuff up, Matthew was great. I think Matthew's the one who really picked that up. Susan, I don't know if you had a part of that or if you were here when we were doing that. The timing, you know, kind of slips my mind there, but I know Matthew was a big part of that. And he did a great job.
Yeah, so format-wise, we were going to keep it to one page, maybe one picture. So it was condensed and not long or burdensome, and just hitting some highlight and bullet points.
I'll take sides. I totally support this idea, and I would expand upon it just a little bit. Email marketing is very effective, and I can think of at least 3 different occasions it would have been really beneficial to have a district-specific channel. I think it's also useful to have it on a county-wide basis. Constant Contact, MailChimp, any other type of program like this, and I'm sure there's probably enterprise for governments, allows you to create segmented lists, allows you to subscribe not just by geography, but by interest. And what an OA, or maybe I'd suggest an analyst, can do as a content creator and manager is use those platforms, create templates. Somebody doesn't want to do a centerpiece article every month, that's fine. A template comes in with a main news piece, a countywide news piece. If I need to do a one-off e-blast saying, hey, I got some committee positions to fill, it can go out to people that have already identified themselves as interested in that region or in that activity. Neat thing about the outreach and emails is they have privacy policies, and I'm still looking at our website with no privacy policy. And so I think I want us to not only learn all the tools at our disposal, but master them. And I think this would be a really good exercise in, even if you not comfortable writing all the time, every now and then there's a message you want to get out and just emphasize. And even in my district, I sometimes struggle keeping up on what's going on. So we're talking about radios, we're talking about cell phones, we're talking about apps and stuff like that. So if we don't have a robust email outreach tool, whether it's for the generic good news of the month or whether it's an emergency outreach that we can really push a press release that we want to push on our website, but if they don't go to the website, they're never going to see it. So email marketing for the feel-good news is very useful and a good way to connect. Email lists in emergency settings can be super useful, and developing messages that we can put across platforms. We may not recognize ourselves as a media organization, but we truly are. So we haven't really leveraged this part of it yet, and I like the idea of exploring this quite a bit.
Yeah, just last thing, in thinking, in hearing the discussion, I also, go on the radio as well with KPFZ because at times some of the stuff that's written throughout the county, I don't have an opportunity to, answer specifically and right away. And so I've taken that route. I've also created like a Facebook page so that it's specifically for my position. And that way I'm not commingling my personal page. And so, this gives me another thing to put on those, which is fine, but I make posts on there as it is. And so I think, like, either way, I'm still doing it. I kind of have to, so, yeah.
Was it me? Okay. May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
How about if we bring back a sample of this one page to the board back on the 27th, so you can get an idea and say yay or nay or add input, and we can also share with you the workload or the hours it takes to put it together, and the board can make a decision at that time. Just a suggestion.
That works for me. Would you have another comment?
Yeah, just my last comment. I think that's the primary job of ours is to interact with the community at all times, no matter how we do it, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email chain, whether it's talking in person. And the way that I see it done by other people, and I'll call ourselves politicians, is through their private feed because it's used to continue to interact with voters. And I feel this is using staff to advertise us for the next potential election, and I'm very uncomfortable with using staff on a personal level to advertise what we're doing in our district. That's our job to do that. By being at Rotary meetings, by being at Chamber of Commerce meetings, by being in the community. If it's going to be a board statement like we've done in the past, very comfortable with that. Individuals, and they're taking it on for us. We don't have our own staff. We have a board staff. So it gets really uncomfortable in my position to say yes to doing that, because especially if some are not utilizing it in the same way as others, there's going to be benefits that are beyond just putting out information. It's getting attention as well. And I think that's solely my job to do that. That's the way that I see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just talk about the differences of our districts. I mean, you've got a city, it's a small area, it's, pretty, you've got pretty similar issues throughout the city, and I've got a very large district, so does Supervisor Crandall, but I don't have those town halls, I don't have that ability. And I don't think that this is something that I should do off on my own, because that was what I originally thought. I could just do my own email list, but then staff wants the ability to, if it's coming from an official, and maybe not a politician, but an official about updates on a lot of grant projects and projects that the community needs to be aware of, like the home hardening project. Like, that's really massive. That's in my district, and I have a really difficult time communicating what the opportunities are for those constituents, because I don't have a curated email list, and I think that curated email list should come from the county. So that's, I mean, if you want me to write it myself, I'll write it myself, but I'm just sharing what staff said. They're uncomfortable with me just putting it out there on my own.
And in that example, even more uncomfortable. That's an NCO project that isn't necessarily a county project, and so to have staff time spent on advertising, like.
Okay, that was let me pull
weird.
that one back and talk about the evacuation grant, because that one is, that is a county project. And we do have a lot going on there. And, we're always trying to figure out how to reach our vulnerable population and make sure that we're connecting with everybody. And we know not everybody's on social media. And if you happen to miss that press release that comes through on Facebook, then it's hard to keep track of things. And so I think getting an email in your email box, I understand and recognize that not everybody uses email, but it is there. It is something that you have to manually delete for reading it. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. If you want me to, I'm happy to just do it on my own, but I would like it county sanctioned, because I want to be able to curate that list on my own, but it does sound like we have other supervisors that might be interested. And so, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just wanted to say, because I get on some other supervisors at RCRC, and they're like, oh, this and that, and I'm like, you have staff? Yeah, I have 2 staff, their own personal staff, that do this work for them, and it's not political, it's just their staff to take care of the tasks that I are all taking care of on our own, along with preparing for meetings, budgets, town halls, everything else. And so there's some instances where that does happen, but I do not want to put a burden like that on the staff that already does other things with us as well. So I think there's just a balance we need to look at. I think that's a good proposition that you brought forward, and that's probably how we should go about that, to see.
Sounds like that's a consensus thing,
Okay,
right? I got at least 3, yeah.
Thank you. The next item is Budget Unit 1014, Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, page D-11. In preparing to present this item, Ms. DeLong mentioned that I should just mention her name and not go into descriptors.
No.
But I will go into,
We need to dissect this one.
Yeah.
as you know, the clerk of the board prepares agendas, takes minutes, schedules board meetings, maintains the ordinance, publishes legal notices, and many, many other things, even constituent work. Do you have any questions or comments for me? Or Ms. Johanna?
Can I, and maybe Johanna's going to turn around and try to kick me through the wall. Is there a way to get her a second screen? Because I see her blocked by Zoom all the time where she's supposed to be doing work, and it would be really nice if she could have Zoom on one screen and be able to accomplish her work on another, because I feel like it can be easier up there.
Yes, we can get her another screen. We may even get her a mic instead of you.
Oh, one that goes like.
I like the little
Bobby Brown
lapel
style.
mic.
And we did used to have 2 screens up there.
Oh, I do remember that. It was a long time.
We had a mirror so people could see.
Yeah, I think there were faces that were made in the mirror.
One quick, big uptick, supplies and services went up a bit. Is that a specific ticket item?
Screen.
No,
We just added to it.
software package, something.
I'm pulling it up, so just a second. So which budget, not budget, unit, which account were you talking about? Office supplies?
On, all the way, not quite at the bottom, 2830.
That's for Muni Code hosting, 2 code supplements, so that's our ordinances, Granicus agenda management software system, and Granicus contract amendments. So the software costs are going up.
Okay.
And there used to
is
have
that
3 or
because of
4,
the addition?
well, there used to be 3 or 4 contracts. There was Granicus and a few other companies we had that were paid in separate budget units. Granicus purchased them, all in one now.
But that's not extra cost for hosting the zoning ordinance, once it gets codified, right?
That's not specific to zoning ordinance, no.
All right,
That would be over in CDD, but Muni Code is who that's through as well.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Carter will take the next item.
You're going to have to work on your revenue, Johanna.
Start charging us.
Change of plans, we'll bring HR up here so we can get them back to work.
Who's that guy?
Ours, we like you here in case the, because we need help with this. We don't know how to work it. We just keep it.
There must be a password.
He locked us out.
Hello. Oh, is it on? Yeah. Diana Rico, Deputy HR Director.
Good afternoon, Pam Samick, HR Director. We have 3 budget units. Budget Unit 1341, which is our main department, Budget Unit 9917, which is Employee Wellness, and Budget Unit 9918, which is Unemployment. There are not many significant changes in the main HR budget. We are fully allocated. We have 8 positions with no vacancies. Some of our big achievements, first I'd like to thank my amazing staff for all of their hard work and collaboration with the admin and finance team for all their help and support. A major project that we took on this year, which is more major than we anticipated, was Laserfish, and we actually scanned in 41,000 documents. We're now in the secondary phase and we're validating all of that scanning. So it'll probably be another 6 months to a year to finalize everything, and everything will be electronic after that. We maintain a collaborative work environment and offering HR services and delivery. We increased applicant flow and added 8 diversity boards. We updated our web page this year, created an employee resource page, a learning corner, and added diversity, equity, and inclusion page. This year, we put in 375 recs, resulting in 180 full-time hires and 54 extra help hires. Terminations were at 134 with 44 extra help terminations. 31% of our terminations this year were actually first-year new hires, which is an improvement over last year. Last year, we lost 46% of our new hires within the first year. 22% of terminations were actually retirees this year, so we lost a lot of institutional knowledge this year with 29 employees retiring. Our turnover rate for 22-23 was 15.36, which is an improvement over last year at 17.66. The Bureau of Labor Statistics don't have their 22 rates up yet, but in 2021, nationwide turnover rate was 47%. So we're making some improvements, and we're doing a little better than nationwide. Hiring incentives and referrals this year, we paid out 31 hiring incentives, approximately $265,000. We had 71 employee referrals, resulting in 19 hires with $19,000 paid out. Our extraordinary requests this year, we have $40,000 to cover staff leaves. We've got a couple people going out on leaves. We have another $50,000 for ongoing maintenance and finalization of the Laserfish project. I'm also asking, which is not currently in the budget, that we couldn't get to last year, which was the $25,000 carryover for some custom reporting. Laserfish just kind of took on a life of its own, and it was more complicated than we anticipated, so I didn't get to hire the consultant to help with some reporting. I'm also asking, and this is something that CAO Parker and I discussed, $150,000 for new department head training, like a consultant or a mentor that would help them develop a first-year plan and execute and meet with them and mentor them through their first year. I also think, which is not in the budget, but we may need to do it before next year, is that we should look at a mini salary survey, which could be completed between HR and finance. We learned a lot during our last salary survey. I don't think we would have to outsource this. This could be taken on as one of our major projects in addition to our day-to-day work. And with that, we could see where we're really at. I'm hearing every department head talk about salary, every department head talk about the fact that our salary survey is outdated. It was almost outdated when we implemented it. So that might be a consideration that we want to take back and look at during mid-years or sooner if the board desires. Our goals for 23-24, we want to put a priority on recruiting and hiring to reduce our vacancy rate. Of course, we want to finalize and finish up our Laserfish project. Our forms and policies need revamping and updating. So those would be our major projects, along with leadership and training for supervisors, managers, and employees. Any questions?
Supervisor Spatier?
Sounds like you got a memo that I gave to CAO Parker as those numbers were needed. So,
No, actually, I just did what I did last year.
oh, it was just telepathy. That's awesome. So when we had the workshop, Robert Bendorf, in one of my phone calls with him before the workshop that we had, he asked me some of those questions. What's your turnover rate? How many people retired? How many people left? And I'd try to give him a number. He's like, don't guess. You need to know. And I would love to. I'm glad that we are doing better than last year. I'd love to see what the longer trends are. But if we can get down to a 5 to 7% turnover rate, that would be awesome. There's ways to make that happen. Because if we can stop using you as a recruiting machine and then more as a staff support machine, maybe retention might even be better because of that. Not to say you're not supporting them, but it would expand what you can do for staff. So I think that's a much larger conversation, but those numbers are really useful to know how much of your time, how much of our department's time are just dealing with recruiting and recruiting and recruiting, and hence why sometimes we take longer than we anticipate to get certain things accomplished. That there's only so much time. I believe it's 2,080 hours in a year if we're doing 8 hours a day, and there's only so much one person can do or one department can do in that amount of time. So I appreciate all that level of information. One of the things you didn't speak of is your HR software. I know that you and I have been back and forth on this, and I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, that it's not necessarily the most up-to-date technology for you to use. What's your timeline for looking into updating that? What potential costs is that? Just to see how we need to prepare and when you would need that support to be able to get that, because you're not able to get a level of information easily out of that machine.
To say the least, our HRIS system is horrible, and we
I didn't want to use those words for you.
I can say that. I mean, we enter information 5-6 times over in many different databases, CalPERS, benefits, so there's a lot of data entry. Not only that, I mean, to process a new hire and process this level of terminations, that's probably 3 people's full-time jobs. That's all they do. Paperwork, new hires, process, raises, evaluations. I mean, it's continual data entry. I mean, and I'm looking at some of our new hires who are leaving within 1 month, some within 2 days of being hired. So is it our recruiting process? Are we identifying what the job really is? Because the fact that we still lose so many in the first year, there's definitely been an improvement. I think orientation, some departments do a fantastic job with orientation and training. Other departments do not. And you kind of figure it out on the job. There's no manuals, there's no training. And it's a burden for employees to come in and feel like they don't know what to do, where to go, or training, or how big the county is, or who to identify for any particular services. And some of this, with this institutional knowledge leaving, some of this is in people's heads. And it's like you're not going to experience it until you experience it for the first time. So I think we should do a better job at orientation and training. As far as the system, it would really be, we'd have to work with the auditor's office because we are the front end to the payroll. That information flows into them. So it's not just something where I can say, this is what I like, and this is what will work for me, because we share data and information with payroll. So it is a lengthy RFP process to figure out software that's going to work for both of us.
Almost sounds like with the upgrade to the accounting software that it has to kind of be done simultaneously.
That is exactly the plan.
Or else we'll get something that eventually won't work with whatever new software we come up with.
Budgeting, HR system, payroll system, all of that at the same time as the ERP.
It's big.
We haven't talked a lot with Pam and Diana yet because we haven't reached that stage yet, but within 3 to 5, we plan on going there.
3 to 5 years?
Oh, no, implement.
Oh, 3 to 5 months?
It takes that long to implement any software.
Oh.
Okay. And I just wanted to highlight the efficiency issues within your department that need to wait for us to provide a certain amount of funds in order to get those things accomplished. Obviously, it's not going to happen today, but I wanted to make sure that what I've learned from my conversations with you was known by the rest of the board, and I'd love to see those numbers continue to decrease and your efficiencies also increasing so you can provide a stronger, more robust support system for all staff, because I think retention has something to do with that as well. So, and then is it possible to go over the list of what you're asking above and beyond what was already in the budget, just so I'm sorry I talked too long and now I forgot.
Yes. So I'd like to re-request the consultant $25K to help us do some custom reporting in our current system. And then the other ask is $150,000 for new department head training mentorship. I mean, we'll have to find a service. I've talked to a couple of different people, but I feel like it's a great idea when you're a brand new department head, somebody that can come in and help you develop a plan, look at your staffing, develop a plan to come together, because now you're bringing a big department or a small department together and execute a first-year plan. You know, what does my first 30 days look like, my 60, 90, and so on and so on. I think that level of support would be excellent for, we have many new department heads right now.
Yes, yes.
The plan was to bring both those forward in September, and with the turnover rate we do have, that 150,000 training for new department heads likely will become part of the normal budget.
I agree with both. Other institutions use those types of things, education, whether you're a teacher or administrator, you have to go through some sort of further training process to better understand, so I'm in support of both.
And then the last clause I ask is whether or not we would want to look at just a mini salary survey taken on by, HR and finance. We learned, a lot working with CPS HR. We currently do all the benches for class and comp request. We take it out and look. So we're well-versed in how to do that. I think if we did 150 of our positions, that would give us a much better idea of where we're at. And I don't know if we should wait until 2025 or 24, 25.
I think we need to get started on that. What was the cost for that?
It was $100,000 for CPS HR,
Okay.
Yeah,
but she
And
said she could do it in-house.
I think we
You
can
can do
do
it
it
in-house.
in-house. Now, that might take some temps to take some maybe data entry off of my analyst because, we're doing all of the benches and going out and collecting all the data. So I think with finance help, we could really take this on. And it would give us a much better idea of where we're really at. Because I think it's problematic to take departments and start doing benches just for them, and then we'll be back in the situation we were in when we implemented this, which is you had a lot of upset people who forgot they got raises over the years, who didn't get a raise when we implemented because they were raised up periodically. So I think out of fairness and also just from a knowledge standpoint, let's know where we're really at. Because we do know our class and comp study is already outdated.
Staff did a lot of work even though we paid $100,000 to CPS HR, admin, and finance staff did a lot of work as well. So we are very, unfortunately, experienced, so it'll be efficient.
So what do you think the in-house cost would be with the temp staff?
I could draw something up and bring it back. It's more our time, and then,
Well, we can present that as part of a
September?
September adjustment.
yeah.
Okay.
And then a talk with Stephen and his group, because he's got some, transitions in his department that we need to account for before we take on something that major. But the first work starts with HR doing the benches, meeting with the department heads, determining how many positions we're actually going to bench for each department. But, through the study, we did 25. We really need to do a lot more.
Okay. Supervisor Green?
Thank you. A couple things. One, appreciate you so much diving into Laserfiche and really trying to leverage that. And it's there for everyone, every department. So if you haven't dived in and kicked the tires, let's do it. Question about records retention and destruction. I know HR has like crazy rules on that. So have you had occasion to update that? Do you have a continuous policy or an
Yes.
intermittent policies? So that's already set in place.
We updated it last year. In fact, we deleted our 45 years of information that was sitting in the basement. So that was a major project last year. So we created a records retention policy around that. We'll also be getting rid of all the physical files once we validate what was scanned into Laserfiche.
And I really appreciate that. It varies by department, just what they got to keep and what they don't. But I would still hazard a guess that we have fewer departments with continuous policies than probably we should. So another reason maybe to get on Laserfiche is just if you haven't taken a look at your records retention and destruction policies or don't know what one is, worse. And I don't know if I can, that's probably not within your portfolio to worry about other departments and how they handle their records, but if I can offer you up as a resource if somebody's been down that road, I would love to do it. The other question about orientation and training, there's your set of training, and of course, once they get into the position, there's ongoing training within the department. And if you see room for improvement in the initial onboarding, again, recovering line staff, I see room for improvement in maybe some departmental training practices. Not a criticism, just a real fact. And I'm wondering, does there exist some form of municipal form of learning management software? Because, you know, sometimes it isn't even just book learning. If we had a knowledge base of frequently asked questions by department and could figure out how to host that on our website or on the intranet, or you know, like we go out to Vector Solutions for occasional third-party trainings, but if there's a way to stage stuff on a local LMS portal, and we could start looking at supporting our departments with enhancing their ability to train employees using the best tools we have. Is there any LMS stuff out there?
Not that we have, but it is something we could look into. But I mean, I can tell you that employees come to HR for payroll things all the time because they don't know the difference between us. So we're constantly referring them, no, we don't handle payroll, you have to go here. So there, I mean, I think there's some basic improvements we can make. And some of the things we hear from employees is that, you know, they feel lost, that they don't always know how to access things. So I think we can do a better job there. We have streamlined our orientation. Now most of our forms electronically, we can send our benefit package out ahead of orientation. We would like to even get more automated and maybe use iPads so that it will integrate with Laserfish, so that they would have, you know, iPads or some type of entry and they could do it right here in the boardroom, and then it loads into Laserfish. We're not having to take it back to our department and scan it. So I think there are enhancements we can do once we're fully up and integrated with Laserfish, but I will caution any department that's moving to it, it's much more complicated. It's not complicated, but time consuming. Very time consuming. Once we get on it, it won't be as time consuming, but the process of putting 10 years of data, 7 years of terminations into that, that's 41,000 documents that we like scanned our brains out this year with temps and HR. When we weren't doing projects, the entire team was scanning.
You realize I was trying to encourage people to get into Laserfish, right?
I just want people to appreciate that there are more.
Not only the scanning difficulty, but I have to update my policy. No, come on.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Pam.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask any more questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Do you have one?
One last comment. I agree with everything. We're doing that at the class and comp anyway. Every department head is coming in and has a different request. So really the request that you're asking for is kind of going on anyway every day with you guys. So I think for us to get ahead of that, we set that line here just a couple, 2 years ago now. And so I think staying up on it is very important. So, obviously in support of that. One thing always, that we're all probably approached with, again, is just in the department head training consultant, as we're bringing new folks on, is that customer service side of it. Because I get feedback, and I can't speak for everybody else, but being very blunt with someone who comes in a distressed situation is a real challenge. We all get calls on that of, man, I understand the answer, but you could have just said it a little bit nicer of, no, we can't, just, no, I don't know, no. Those aren't good answers all the time. You need to have those, but customer service to our constituents is very important. Sometimes they come in a vulnerable state. You don't know what's going on at their homes. So always being thinking from that standpoint of, they're the constituent, but the customer's always right, and of course there's situations where they get out of hand, but there are some other situations where people just come in vulnerable states, and we need to, have that, try and calm the situation down, understand what's going on, and just not be blunt. So customer service, I think, needs to be a big part of that, especially with new directors coming in, folks we got coming in. If we can start there and kind of train through the whole program, really important. It's really important,
And there's a lot of free training on Vector Solutions. There's such a big course catalog that's free. You can take it ad hoc anytime you want. whether it be Excel or Word or PowerPoint. They've got a lot of great courses through there. And then through the library, lynda.com has a lot of amazing training. Those are free for us. So I think we got to get the word out on some of the free stuff, but then go, now that COVID is diminishing, we can also go back to training and start putting on training for employees again.
Supervisor Spot, they hit it on the head there of, you being able to be supporting the directors, supporting the employees, those types of things, instead of the recruitment tool, the engine that's trying to just bring us the workers. So I think that's important. And you said it yourself, too. If a new employee comes in, they're, kind of feeling out of place, don't understand the real responsibility of the job, you're going to give a short answer to somebody because, really might not know, and you don't want to say that. So anyway, just treating our constituents the best that we can. I understand everybody has different issues, different things going on, but a lot of times, especially that we have a vulnerable population, an older population, when they come in, they're kind of intimidated already, and it's how we treat them. And, anyway, I just had an incident yesterday, so it's real fresh in my mind of, just how we're treating people when they're standing at the counters or asking questions, because they don't want to be here, but they have to be here.
Okay. One more question?
So two things. I'll continue and segue from what was last commented on. It was brought to our attention the other day that there is the opportunity of CTA. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about is we are probably the #1 ambassadors in speaking about Lake County. I'd like to know what would a cost look like. I don't want to say, yes, let's put it in there, but what would it look like to offer a couple of CTA classes to our staff, especially oncoming staff, where here's some information so you can fall in love with Lake County, to learn that much more about Lake County so you can speak in very positive ways about Lake County. It's got that customer service aspect to it as well. So that's something that I would be interested in if other supervisors are okay with that. My second thing is, I don't disagree with the reviewing what the new baseline would be for the class and comp, but I also, the same vacancies that exist today are the vacancies that existed in 2020 before we started, and I just want to make sure that we can help to fill some of those vacancies because they didn't move as quickly or they moved just as much as everything else. We seem to always be struggling with similar situations. I want to make sure that the ones that have been brought to you first still get your attention while you do go ahead and work on that. That would be my personal opinion.
Okay. Are we done with HR now? No.
Yes, with the main HR.
The main, oh, right, the main one. Okay.
Now unemployment.
Well, first, wellness. So there are really no significant changes in our employee wellness and self-funded dental. That kind of stays in. Eventually, I would like to start a wellness committee, but we've just have so many other projects that are first that I don't have the bandwidth to look into that. So that's kind of going to stay status quo this year. Our next budget unit is budget unit 9918 for unemployment. Last year, we had 74 claims paying out a total of $668,000. 54 of those claims were probationary and extra help terminations, which automatically get unemployment. So there's no fighting that. The other 20 were odds and ends of different types of terminations. Wherever we can, we do actually have a service that works on fighting our unemployment claims when there is cause to do so.
Supervisor Spatier?
I'll send you information just in case it can help, especially maybe lowering our insurance rates. But Blue Zones does have a Blue Zone certification wellness program for agencies. I know the hospital's working on theirs, Clear Lake's working on theirs. If it can help, that's an extra motivation to even look into it. If it doesn't, maybe there's still some benefits that we can find on a personal level for our staff. So I'll send it your way to take a look. Should have done that already.
Yeah. You're off the ball.
Yes. I'm back on.
Okay. Is that all for HR now?
That's it for HR.
Okay, thank you so much. We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Do we want to?
We got to vote.
Approve it?
Oh, no,
It's all one.
Oh, yeah, shoot.
Yeah.
When you said done, I
all
was
one.
excited.
never mind.
Do we
Just
have to
start.
stay for the approval?
It's all.
No, because we're going to approve all of
We got
the admin
20 other,
stuff.
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I got ahead too. I was going to start reading them all. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Pam. Okay.
Mention that the portal for people to look up resolutions and ordinances are on the website. Not all of them. But then also by the meeting. Also like dig through and stuff.
Don't call me, it's on the computer, man.
Just type in the numbers or keywords.
Before we end, maybe we can set a.
Like when people ask for all these cannabis things, you can just type in cannabis
And it'll come up with, yeah.
resolution and ordinance covered right now.
Because then if you filled it out there, you never had to transfer it.
All the ones we've made up.
That's where I saw it going, and I did.
Man, I thought we were gonna be out of here by 3 now. I can say it now, because we're an hour past, you know, shoot, 5 minutes past. God, no.
But I warned, because I'm the one that.
I wanna see the chickens. I can't quit thinking about how little you said it like that little baby chicken, dude.
I love
'Cause I know the size of the regular ones, but the little guinea hen things, they gotta be just like a freaking quarter.
Yeah, we're part of that.
Furry little quarter.
It looks great on here.
Absolutely fine.
I know,
Yeah, they're definitely cute, man.
How big are they?
They're like, because they're like bantams.
They're little
Yeah,
fur balls.
little
They're
tiny
like half
feathers,
the
man.
size of like normal chickens.
That's awesome.
You feel like you're gonna squish them when you pick them up. They're cute.
That's awesome.
Baby chicks, like, being is like the most relaxing noise ever too.
Because it's not like obnoxiously like,
No,
Super
you
loud,
can
it's
just,
like,
they're just there.
it's like,
Almost.
it's so
Go.
adorable.
my dog, we had it in our bathtub in our bathroom and we kept the door closed.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw the family going in and checking things out. And she's like, what's going on? Finally, we let her. She wanted so bad to get in there, had no idea what was going on. We let her in and she's just sniffing around. And all of a sudden she turns and sees this shaky shit. Her eyes are like, you've been hiding something from me.
Oh, man.
Our dog could care less about the chicks. She like is obsessed with the chicken. Because they have like a weird game where like the chicken will like run in its coop and then she'll hide behind the coop and then it'll like walk down the stairs and like freak out on her and then she runs in circles and they go back and forth all day.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
She like lost a bunch of weight. She was like overweight. She's a golden doodle. She was like overweight and ever since we got the chicken, she's like lost it. She like looks healthy now.
Because she's got someone to play
Run
with.
circles all day.
Yeah, running around.
She's got a partner.
I know.
Mics are live.
That's fine. We're talking about chickens.
Oh, are they not? I turned mine off. They heard the chicken conversation?
Mine's on. Oh, it's off. EJ. It was a wholesome conversation.
Yeah, chickens, man, the country.
How long is cannabis going to take? Okay, well, I got till 5. I got a 20-minute 5. Rather get out before 5. Got 1.8. As long as we keep getting Prop 64 grants to help them pay their taxes, we'll keep making it's such a weird cycle of how things work.
All right, it's 3:09 now. 1 minute past. No, I had, 3:08 was our 5-minute. Where's Michael?
I don't know if his room's right there.
More on this side.
What are we doing next, Stephen?
Budget Unit 1072, Cannabis Program. This budget unit captures cannabis revenues that would otherwise, I'm pausing because we're not on the screen yet.
Okay, thanks, Jake.
Restart. Next up, Budget Unit 1072, Cannabis Program, which is Fund 064. This budget unit captures cannabis revenues that would otherwise be commingled with the general fund, which is not federally allowable. The funding for this budget unit comes from cannabis cultivation taxes, grow site development and environmental planning permits, and administrative fees related to cannabis activities, as well as this is where the Prop 64 grants come in that CDD and LCOE are utilizing. There are many accomplishments, but I am going to go straight into a little bit more detail than normal because of the subject matter. We are expecting the taxes to come in at about 1.4 million. Fiscal year 22-23, it actually came in a little higher at 1.7, so I believe I told you in the beginning that we would bump the 1.4 up to 1.7 in September. We're expecting about 45,000 to come in on taxes from cannabis businesses. All the other revenue in this budget unit is related to either the permits, cannabis permits through CDD, or the environmental review, which is part of permits for CDD, or the funding from the Prop 64 grants. So when Community Development Department, I'll say it out loud once before I do CDD again, when they're talking about the cohort 3 of the Prop 64 grant, that is going to come into this budget unit first, and then as they utilize it / claim it, will be transferred out to their department. So there's an LJAG grant, which was currently set to pay for the LACO agreement. It basically was to fund permits, external services, contractors to complete permits for us related to cannabis. Nothing else within the expenses comes to a great until we move into the actual cannabis tax. So I'll go ahead and pull up, unless there's questions before we go into the cannabis tax specifically.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So basically, development permits are flatlined because moratorium is not the right word, but we haven't effectively blocked the new applications unless they've been holding on to a fictional water board permit for the last 3 years.
Correct. We have a very, very small amount budgeted for it.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, let me Permits for development and cannabis fee sites, we're expecting 37,000, and as permits go, that's extremely small.
And I just want to highlight that, because again, I know we have a cannabis task force, we're looking at changes to the ordinance, but we have a perfectly functional ordinance that isn't being applied just by virtue of the fact that we can't get new applicants. So as they move forward, couple options, we can wait to see all the fancy dancy stuff that comes up with that and any EIR that has to go, but there's a budgetary question that has to come. You can quantify the financial cost of the ongoing blockage of new permit applications, and I just want to highlight that.
I think there was a big cost of the backlog. It really impacted our department, and I think it impacted other permits and other projects, and so we're getting this under control, and I think we're right where we need to be. Supervisor Spatier, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just two things. One, I haven't heard any complaints from the community that they're being denied access to CDD. And so I'd love to hear from CDD if that is something that's coming up. And also, I'd like to, in September, get word from CDD if we are going to continue using LACO, because I know that they've been put on hold, which would free up some of that money to be able to maybe use it for illicit grows or anything else that Prop 64 grant allows us to use it for.
And see, that's why I brought up the specific nature of it. That LJAG one is specific to contracting out. The way we have it set up with the state right now is specific to contract out, not LACO, but contract out for those services.
Okay. Well, still like
Doesn't mean it can't be fixed.
Still like to look at that and see what the need is and better place it if the need is not there.
And just briefly, I want to respond. You're not going to hear complaints from people who've given up years ago. I know plenty of people holding on to water blower permits who can't do anything with them, so.
All right, so talking about strictly the cannabis tax at this point, I know it's kind of small. If I zoom in, then I have to scroll around all over the place to make it harder. Would you guys prefer me to zoom in a little?
I'm good as
I
is.
can see it.
All right, so this is a brief history from the dawn of time for cannabis tax. So total allocations since it has been in inception, $2 million for BOS discretionary, $2,701,000 for planning, code enforcement, water resources, environmental health. Same amount, $2.7 million for law enforcement. Also $2.7 for economic development, housing, risk reduction. $900,000 for youth programs. And just under $1.4 million has been allocated for workforce retention and development. $1 million for deferred maintenance. $1 million for roadmap task force. And what you can't see quite off to the right is $4,891,233 for the stabilization fund. And that is the request to keep that one whole for any potential time when our workforce general fund / other budget units can't handle payroll. So the next line down is total actual expenditures to date. 175,409 is in the CAN grant column, and the reason why it's only 175 is because that's the amount of the original 800 that doesn't technically fit one of the other criteria. BOS discretionary as of today, 2 days ago, $666,247 has been spent. For planning code enforcement, $523,480. Law enforcement, a little over $366,000. Economic development, housing, risk reduction, long titles, $571,000. Youth programs, $277,000. And workforce retention, $674,000. And those dollars have gone to CDD and child support are the main recipients of those two, the workforce funds. Roadmap Task Force has only claimed $103,000. There's a lot this year that hasn't been transferred over yet, but like I said, this is just as of a couple days ago what has truly gone through the accounting system. I know that 103,000 will go up by quite a bit. Now moving on to row 8 and below is what is currently in the 23-24 budget, recommended budget before you today. So under BOS discretionary, should finish the word, we have a little over $1.1 million, which in essence it's this number in September will be exactly the difference between total actual expenditures and the 2 million allocation. And if you notice,
The 2 million includes this year or last
it
year?
includes this year.
At what?
All of the top includes this year.
At
one-
100,000 each? Or
This
50?
sheet has it as 100,000.
Okay,
Because it's 4 times 500, yeah.
okay, just making sure. I'm
And
trying to believe.
that's where, this is if you guys decide to switch, your board decides to switch it to 100,000 instead of 50,000, because I heard that was a possibility. And if you go all the way to the bottom, that shows the unallocated funds. And for the board, it shows 176,000 instead of 250,000, which the reason for that is the amount budgeted for 23-24, I can already tell you is a little high because the expenses have come in higher for 22-23. And that would be adjusted during the September hearings. For planning, code enforcement, water resources, environmental health, currently Lucerne dredging, 100,000, surveyor incentive, year 2, a little over $4,500. Lake bed abatement and salvage, 100,000. And BRC match with water resources, 135,000. This is the one where it's multiple years, 100,000 times 5 years, and it cumulative. So if they only spend 50,000 in year 1, next year's 150. And continually, this is, I believe, year 2. So that they didn't spend the entire 100 grand last year. And then 800,000 for the Middle Creek US ACE design work, which leaves unallocated $1,038,766.90. Got to have the cents in there. The reason why, so with that large number being said in public, I want to explain why last year it was so much lower than this year, even though we only received $1.7 million in revenue. The reason for that is at this time of year last year, we were utilizing a little over $4.7 million of cannabis tax to cover the raises from the MOUs. And by September, we were able to cover those raises within our ongoing revenue. So that released 4.7 back into the allocation of the 30-30-30-10 of the policy. So law enforcement, armory project, $329,533. 2 deputies, where 2 or 3 years ago, your board approved their last 2 deputies. If they're hired, cannabis would pay for it, $216,000. And then the ALPR, which is those license plate readers, $65,000, and that's an annual. So the total budget for law enforcement is $610,815 for 23-24, which leaves an unallocated fund balance of a little over $1.7 million. Economic development, housing, risk reduction. Oh, I was looking on my other screen to see where the mouse was. Total expenditures so far have a little over $571,000, and only $5,000 for RRA contribution is budgeted for 23-24. which leaves the unallocated funds at a little over 2.1 million. So there are funds there for those activities. Youth programs, the library still has $317,670 budgeted in 23-24. That was ongoing staff to staff up the libraries. And the total unallocated is a little over $305,000. Workforce retention, $103,262 for child support is the only one budgeted in 23-24, leaving an unallocated amount of $603,000. That's for any department like CDD who may or may not need to tap into that funding. Deferred maintenance, if everything goes smoothly through the end of fiscal year 22-23, $88,510 is budgeted in 23-24 for deferred maintenance, which would leave $236,000 left. Until the actuals are known for 22-23, these are all estimated. By that point in time, Public Services may have used it all. Roadmap Task Force, we have budgeted for 23-24 a little over $757,000, which leaves an unallocated balance of $138,000, which I would bet will come in 22-23. So just hasn't gone through the accounting system yet. And then keeping the stabilization fund at the same amount of 4.891 million, which is over here in the hashtags that you can't see. And I can't widen it because I don't have an activation key for this computer.
It says it on top, it's good.
Oh, does it? So what the total unallocated is a little over $11 million, which includes, of course, the stabilization funds. So if you look at just roadmap task, well, we'll go with just planning, law enforcement, economic development, and youth programs, so the main policy items. The unallocated is $5,194,000, almost even. So yes, doing 100,000 instead of 50,000 is doable for BOS discretionary. Is this closer to something that can be understood? Because I know we've tried for years to try to make something understandable.
Well, it's interesting to see how it's accumulated because we didn't touch much last year.
We tied it up into, we were pretty sure we were going to have to utilize it for staff expenses, and freeing that up, big difference.
Yeah. So under the risk reduction, is that where we can we use that for tree money? I know we talked about that last year.
That is all about your definition.
Of reducing risks along county right-of-ways? But didn't we talk, we thought that we were going to get this program off the ground last year, and I think that we thought that we were going to draw on
We were planning on cannabis being at least a
part of it.
Fronting of the money.
Right.
And this funding source, it definitely can be the funding source to front it. And does it fit in the economic development, housing, risk reduction pot? That is up to your board to decide, as not just a fronting, but maybe actually match if it is required.
Do you all think that it meets the risk reduction part of it? Does it have to meet all three? Okay.
Nope, it's slash or.
Okay.
I'm just curious, so this isn't Can Grant per se, this is the whole cannabis
This is the cannabis
kitty
policy.
So not all of it allocated, not a lot of fresh requests I see in there. So we just didn't even touch it last year, and departments didn't get to ask for stuff last year. Did we have any fresh
There
asks?
were expenses last year and a lot of requests. What I would expect, I just didn't show you the 22-23 because once I add more and more data, it becomes extremely confusing, and it becomes hard to show in an environment like this. So we can't, that's where the total expenditure column on row 6 is. That's expenditures since the beginning, which includes 22, 23. There are known expenditures that aren't in that line that are going to happen in 22, 23. That's why this is a point in time. I'm not estimating anything. This is a point in time of the expenditures, and this set of numbers will look very different in September. Not like $1 million difference, but hundreds of thousands, it should look different, yes.
Like
So-
the roadmap task force.
Correct. There should be some more roadmap task force. Discretionary revenue is going to change. And I believe certain ones from like law enforcement haven't come out yet, haven't been transferred.
If it helps, I don't know if this is on, for the deferred maintenance, for example, that there are just purchase orders that are out for parking lot seals and HVAC upgrades. So that's about 250,000, give or take, that would come off of that in the next, I guess, month to 2 months. So just for one of those items, that's an example that at least one department has going through.
So that unallocated amount will either for row H or I, deferred maintenance, will have 0 unallocated because it will either be spent by the end of 22, 23, or we will add it to September knowing that those are going to be spent in July.
So if this is a point in time, then it's hard for us to use this for budgeting or saying, can we take a little here, take a little there, because we don't have the full allocation.
Anything I
figure
ever
here.
give you will be point in time or best guess.
I think we have a conversation and it comes back in September so that we can look at the final numbers. Nothing gets actually
Correct.
necessarily accomplished between now and September until final budget, but at least by September, we should know what the real numbers are by June 30th, 2023.
And with these large numbers, you can make some changes before September, just don't make really drastic ones until we have the actuals.
Supervisor Spatier?
All budgets are off estimates and point in time.
So I think when you asked the question about the risk reduction, no, the tree mortality, I'm in agreement that, yeah, I think this fits the spot, for that fronting of the funds before we get them. If we get the match, we won't have to use it, it'll fall back into line. But definitely think that's the right conversation to have, whether or not it's the whole thing or how much we need, but yeah, in agreement with that question.
To get us started.
And what are we looking at as far as number?
We don't know yet. We had that conversation yesterday. We're going to bring it back in September. We'll be a little further down the road. We'll find out, what's been approved, and actually, many things will hopefully be approved. And so that, we're just saying that that's a possibility. We don't know yet.
Okay.
Same conversation we had last year.
But it's a large project in all the conversation we've had.
It's huge
$2 million probably is,
Nothing.
A small piece.
well, it is something.
I mean, but
'cause
yeah,
we could do a bunch of other
Better that
stuff
we
with
do
that.
something than nothing.
It is something. So I just think the $2 million, if you're asking the question, Supervisor, I would say the $2 million. You said how much, I would say the 2. Unless I'm reading it wrong, I'm pretty sure I could see it.
Well, and
Well, I stopped sharing.
just so you understand, Supervisor Green, there was a committee that put together there was a whole strategy on where are these allocations, what they were for. You were on the committee,
Yep.
right? And so maybe you
Yep.
can explain it. And then we kind of held last year because we weren't sure what was going to happen. But a lot of thought went into how,
Wait a
right?
second.
Some things were held.
I think it was EJ
I don't
and
think
Tina.
I was on the
I think it
committee.
was
Yeah,
EJ and
wasn't
Tina. I mean,
I think I might have been in the
You?
beginning and then it transferred over,
you
so
created the policy. I think you were on it.
we were transferred on and off, on and off.
Right.
So I can't remember when. So we set up the initial conversation, I think, and then a policy was created and then brought back to the entire board. So I would have to
Right,
check and see if
for-
I was on the
Yeah.
committee.
For example, law enforcement was a much smaller percentage. And after a year, we grew it shrank other things, moved things around.
There were iterations upon iterations.
So that's how we got here, just so you understand how each of the percentage of the allocations for each of these columns.
We wanted to create
currently
a
stand
policy, and the discretionary was, all right, everybody didn't get what they wanted, but the discretionary portion for the supervisors was, all right, you have projects in the area as it could build up, because as you guys know, when we go to a department, there's no funds. Well, maybe this project will fit under my discretionary funds, we can move through there
And sometimes faster.
a lot faster.
Yeah.
So are there, again, point in time, so did social services or BH, for example, were they able to latch on to youth programs at all, or not so far?
If they submitted something, they possibly could.
All right.
Youth programs was relatively vague, and it was more towards library so far. There hasn't been any other major requests in that category. LCOE has other grants, et cetera, and that was one of the thought processes in the youth.
All right. I just want to highlight then for those tuning in, if they're still awake, Proposition 64 and then our own local Measure C in 2016, to the extent measure talks about youth programs, it's definitely about health outcomes. You know, if there are adverse impacts of cannabis legalization, especially in terms of substance use disorder and stuff like that, that's on point with really what the intent of Prop 64 and Measure C were as they were stated. Not saying we're locked in. Obviously, it's broader in the tax policy that we've adopted here. But if there are opportunities for youth programs to get latched into this in September, I'd certainly welcome that.
And the reason why youth was dropped to 10% and the other one's 30% is there was a whole lot of state funding available for youth, but not the other areas. Grant opportunities.
And I think once we look at the numbers in September, if we see there hasn't been a drawdown, it's not going to be a huge difference, okay? Well, we just need to, we've all talked about how important the roadmap task force is, and how do we continue to fund that program, and what maybe needs to be shifted around to do that.
And that is a discussion I would kind of like to happen before September.
Okay.
So that I can have it ready for September. And it might be evenly take it from the other policy percentages, or if you see one that isn't being used.
Right.
Do I have a consensus to bring something forward in September for that?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Supervisor, go ahead.
So I see a couple of things. One, we have to have some money for tree mortality. We're running around rampant looking for some money, and it's slapping us in the face today. Let's make sure that we put something there. Let's figure out what that exact number looks like, but obviously we have some available, so that's great. I'm seeing law enforcement and the planning has, or planning/code enforcement has some opportunities to expand the roadmap task force and continue it. What I would suggest is we can meet as the roadmap task force with you to figure out what does a continuity of roadmap task force look like in the Clear Lake Oaks area as we look at expanding. That way, those that are actually involved in the task force can help prescribe what would be the best way to grow. But there looks like there's funding. And another one, it doesn't do a whole lot, but I mean, it's money and it's there. And if we don't have a better place to put it, we have a 10-year road plan as well that might be able to help if there's a match out there and we have some money right here. So those are the three things I'm thinking about. But I know I spoke to Mr. Carter about this. If we can get like a memo to our department heads, or if that can come up at the next department head meeting to ensure that they're aware that these buckets have funds available and that they just need to submit a proposal. It's not a grant, like CAN grant type of thing. It's just, what is your proposal? Because they're the ones that know best what they need for their departments to accomplish the goals that we set up for them.
And the roadmap task force fits right in line with columns D and E, which is the planning, code enforcement, and the law enforcement. So there's funding at the bottom of both of those of over $1 million a piece. So it's easy to find roadmap task force funding for a year or two, because remember, this is carryover from the
Right.
good years, 1.7 million isn't going to carry this overall budget unit much past a certain point.
And I think that's where we need to come up with a continuity plan. The fines will help out to bolster it. The change in the community atmosphere will help that we won't need as much. We leave some people behind that we hired for this area and then grow for this area. I don't think we need to leave everything as is. Once it's cleaner, as long as we remain. But again, that's, the plan needs to be diced out.
And again, can't invite or predict what's happening, but depending on the timing and what the work product is of the task force and what support that process is going to need, whether it's in terms of additional planning staff, letting out an EIR or something like that, or if we are to even entertain discussion of can we do at least a modest reopening while we're kicking the tires on whatever our ordinance 2.0 is going to be a couple years down the road, being able to front some of the planning money in there, just in case CDD incurs some unanticipated expenses. I know they have grants and stuff like that.
No, they're a
This is
general
more
fund
ready.
department, so general fund naturally does that unless it's completely something unbudgeted.
Sorry?
Pl- s-
I'll do it later. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this?
So just
Okay.
a couple of other JPAs too, just a question, and I know, Stephen, you're usually in the conversations with me on this. We have two JPAs. We have the Risk Reduction Authority and we have the AVA, Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Program, in which we're always running into, and this may not be the place to talk about, but I'm going to bring it up because cannabis funds, I think for code enforcement, budget costs. So AVA funds, we get funds to run the program, but we don't get funds to do the budget. To budget, audit, I apologize, threw the wrong word in there. And so audits on both of those JPAs, even the Risk Reduction Authority. We're back online, we're on track, there's a cost. So
this, go
Just
ahead,
a
sorry.
question.
Continue. I heard someone else talk first.
No, I was going to respond. We should be good for the AVA because we changed the percentage that goes into the audit category, and that can be changed on an annual basis.
Okay.
So
This
hopefully,
year, the cost had changed, that's why.
oh,
I'm
that's
bringing it
right.
up.
It more than doubled.
It doubled,
That's
so
right.
we're like, oh, we're ahead of the game, and now we're,
Back behind.
so anyway,
I forgot.
so I don't know,
This would be a possible funding source if the county/board would like to offset that expense for AVA and RRA, yes.
I think AVA, it's such an important program, and I think it ties into code enforcement. That's why I bring it up, because code enforcement is up there on those, and we can get ahead of it, but this may be, this year alone, maybe a situation where the cost is doubled.
Because it doubled, that's not a bad idea, because it's hard for those kind of JPAs to all of a sudden come up with 10 instead of 5,000.
Because it's,
Or 12 instead of 5.
yeah.
I'm sure my phone will ring when I say this, but I think that we need to have a conversation with our city counterparts rather than us just put in for that, and that each one, we should split it up. We did the percentage change to meet the need, and if we can prove that it's above and beyond, then there's no reason why all three jurisdictions can't put in their fair share for that. Just my,
Don't mind having the conversation, but we've had those conversations unsuccessfully, that, so I'd like to always have a fallback if that doesn't happen, because we want to make sure we're concurrent. We are current on RRA and the AVA, and just want to make sure we continue that along. So I put it out there just as something to talk about. So if I'm in the wrong budget place, please let me know, Stephen.
This is the place to talk about it. We're not necessarily going to make a change at this point, but
Yeah.
that's where you start the conversations and talk to the cities before September.
and we have an AVA meeting before September
Yes.
coming up, so I think we might be able to figure that out by then, as long as we put on the
Okay.
agenda for conversation.
But I'm making the board aware and just want to make sure that we're getting ahead of it, even for RRA.
And JPAs, speaking of recreation, maybe, there may be something we can do here. Certainly, the recreation JPA will be serving youth in a wide number of ways. Oops, he's coming up. That's either a good idea or I'm talking out my face again.
No, I had the same thought, if you don't mind, just piggybacking off of that, not so much through the JPA, because there's no funding associated with it, and we're talking about county funds, but through Parks and Recreation submitting an application. I already emailed him as I was sitting back there that I'll be submitting an application for youth programs for this, for Parks and Rec. So I appreciate it if you don't advertise it to the other department heads. That's what I'll suggest. But that was what I wanted to just comment on, that I will submit that, whether it's through the recreation agency or through public services for enhanced youth, Parks and Rec programs.
Programming,
Exactly.
yep.
Okay, but now that you did it,
Well,
between you and Scott, campgrounds. So campgrounds could conceivably serve youth in a number of ways too. But I got a little bouncing ball. So I understand that's responsibility falls on you, but when the lands fall, that somewhere goes different. So ask early, ask often.
Absolutely. Thank you.
yep, I definitely be in favor of the programs through Parks and Rec, making it Parks and Rec and not just Parks.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Other than I would like to know if the board pleases to switch your contribution from 50 to 100, this is the time that we would make that fix or not.
Yes, please.
From 50 to 100?
At
Yeah,
100 or
we
go
talked
down
about
to
it before where we might lower it to 50, and this is the first year we tried that, and I have heard from multiple board members they wanted to keep it at 100 if possible.
Okay,
So,
if we can do it, yes.
Yeah.
Quick
Okay,
last comment.
in that case, let me put it out there real quick on how to amend it.
Okay. What, Bruno, or?
Just a quick
Brent?
last comment. I know we brought up the JPA last time with money. Is there another location for funding to be placed in, whether that's capital assets or whatever, other than in here?
I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about.
So we were talking about the Parks and Rec JPA, but
We have nowhere set to put that aside.
No, but we brought it up earlier. Is there another source of funding that can be used?
In the reserve that we're going to create?
Yeah.
September. We just
The
have to
Parks
wait.
Reserve, which
Yeah,
is
the
different
Parks
than the
Reserve.
JPA.
Yeah.
And right now, I don't know that anybody's putting in their money from their jurisdiction in the JPA, and I'd
No.
rather keep it here until
Yes.
it's asked for and we have a plan. So-
Correct. The Parks Reserve, in my mind, was going to be for our parks / our potential projects.
But
within the
my
JPA.
question is not so much that. I think once we finalize those details, we can finalize that. But is there another location other than cannabis taxes that the funding
It has
might
been
come
identified?
from?
No,
Okay, okay.
Okay.
not for that specific.
Just so I understand. Parks and Recs, we're talking about current parks, we're not talking about the JPA.
I was talking about the JPA just because I want to make sure we show commitment to wanting to get something done. And right now, there's no money that's committed to saying we're going to be a good partner, here we are.
So I do think we also need to talk about that in the July ARPA meeting,
Okay.
because it can't go to the JPA per se, but there are methods of sending certain money to, like, the cities for their project, which is through the JPA.
Okay.
So those two are the only funding sources that are in mind at this point.
Okay, what's next?
Well, let me go over the changes real quick so you can do the amended at the end and just be happy with it.
Okay.
So Budget Unit 1072, need to increase the transfer in account 8123 by $250,000. And the other side of that transaction is Budget Unit 1011, account 8122 for $250,000. So technically, the 8123 is a negative 250,000, just so you know, so that they balance out to zero.
Okay.
Next up is non-departmental revenue, Budget Unit 1120, found on page D15. This is the main, let me actually get rid of the Excel. This is the main pot of funding for all of general fund. So this is where the bulk of the revenue is brought in. If you look at the revenue, we're expecting $43,834,000. That is most of what pays for the other general fund departments. There are transfers out of a little over $7 million. A lot of that is actually ARPA. So it's FBA fund balance available and then transferred out because 1120 is your initial starting point. And here is where we go with the talks of Bradley Burns, Prop 72, property tax, secured property tax, unsecured. All of that is in this budget unit. So I don't need to go through that again, but the very top line is current secured, where we're budgeting $20,446,000. And that correlates to the presentation and the graph. The only expenses here are possibility of $122,000, and that's for things that don't fit anywhere else. That's basically the way it is.
Okay, Supervisor Spatier.
So I made a mistake, and I apologize, I missed it. If I can just kind of backtrack to administration 1012, I'd like to open up the conversation for the idea of hiring a contract lobbyist.
1781, please.
It's what?
I
1780.
was going to bring that up in Budget Unit 1781 because that's special projects.
Yep.
Well, I'm just kidding, I didn't miss it, I just got ahead of myself.
I'm like,
Tis right here on my sheet. I've got you. The only change for Budget Unit 1120, though, there is another change that we made yesterday related to the libraries. So Budget Unit 1120 would need to increase the transfer.
Didn't we already make that
No,
motion?
you did it for the library.
I thought you added the,
I told you what the other half would be, but you had never approved, until today, you wouldn't be
you're like
approving
wagging the
1120.
finger at me.
Me, sorry.
Okay, when we get to there,
We're in 1120 right now.
yeah,
So now's the time where if you approved 1120 without the amendment I'm talking about, yesterday didn't really count
okay.
because we weren't talking about 1120. I'm not wagging my finger, sorry. So we need to increase the transfer for Budget Unit 1120 at 8123, which is a negative $100,000, and that's for the bookmobile ARPA funding.
Okay. You'll help us when we get there.
As amended already, that's why I worded it that way.
As amended already. Okay, perfect. So, are we on to central?
Any questions in that one?
Oh, sorry.
No.
Question? Central services, is that?
Next up is central services. This is our budget unit for the mail. This is where Leon is, our mail clerk. Hundreds of thousands of parcels, letters sent out every year. This is also the budget unit where the master cow card statement is paid and reimbursed, about 80,000 a month. And this is also where the copiers, all the Canon copy machines, which is about 90, actually I think we're over 100 now, 105 machines. This is where all the copies and paper and the costs are pushed through to the departments. We pay for it here first and then charge the departments. That is,
Any questions? Okay. We will move on to capital projects.
budget unit 1781 for budget unit, 1778, sorry. I
17.
naturally go to 1781. For some reason, 1778 and 1781, I always do 1781 first. Budget Unit 1778, capital projects. This is the main budget unit for true capital projects as general fund goes. And the reason why Lars, the department head for public services, is here is most of these projects are his. We are just, as admin, the holder of the overall fund. So the main part about it, I'll turn over to Lars for about the projects.
Okay. So other than the first project listed on page A1 under 1778, which is the water line for South Main Street and Soda Bay Road, I don't have involvement with that. But the others are, with one exception under me. I was going to do a quick summary and highlight really just some changes, some requested changes. First, the first change request is on a project titled Courthouse Annex Exterior Repairs. That was initially envisioned for just the annex of the courthouse, but after investigation, we're realizing that it's going to be best to do the whole courthouse, not just the annex. And also, the costs for the annex are going to be a little bit higher, and so the estimates for the whole building are therefore higher. So we're looking at an increase. What's listed there for courthouse annex exterior repairs of $50,000. I'm proposing to increase that to $300,000, and there's a correlating reduction in another project that results in a net zero in this budget unit. So courthouse annex exterior repairs changing to courthouse exterior repairs, and the dollar figure going to $300,000. The correlating reduction is in the first project listed under 6313, and that is the courthouse roof. The funds that are listed there, based on what we anticipate needing to spend next fiscal year, it'll be less than that, so we would have a decrease of $250,000 for a total in that line item of courthouse roof of $567,711. So there's the $250,000 up in one and down in the other. Quick update on the courthouse roof. We're very close to completion. The contractor has requested a final walkthrough. We did that. We have a laundry list of punch list items, and we've negotiated down change order requests at no cost based on the timeline that they've taken on the project. So we're getting near the end. A few other highlights, and actually one other request for a change. What is listed as Lower Lake Town Hall roof, that was an error on our part. That should be Buildings and Grounds shop roof. So we do need to, I'd like to request that change. That's a project that's done, as was the Lower Lake Town Hall roof, but we have carryover funds that we anticipate, or expenses that we anticipate for next fiscal year. So we'll need the appropriations for Buildings and Grounds shop roof. One other one that can come off, Lower Lake Schoolhouse Museum, not a big issue, but that is complete. We don't anticipate any other expenses there. The laundry list of other projects on here, the majority of them are roofs. Those are going to be prepared as a single bid package over the next 1 and possibly 2 fiscal years based on the number of roofs that are there. There's about 6 or 8 of them. I'd like to highlight the last piece here, and I don't have a comment on the senior center renovation. I believe that's really so far been in administration, and I don't mean to punt over to you, but I don't have much on that project at this point. But the courthouse solar project, that we just opened up bids/proposals on Monday. We received 6 of them, so it's an RFQ process going through. It's not a standard low bid or proposal, so it's kind of like a design build. It goes through what's called an energy services contract that we can do design build. So we just opened those up or received them on Monday. We're going through the selection process, so we are making good progress on that project. That is all I have for 1778.
To summarize the actual changes on this recommended budget, account 6313 in budget unit 1778, both of the capital assets are in that same account, so the overall dollar amount will not change. But since you you approve the capital assets, the courthouse roof capital asset itself will go down by $250,000, and the courthouse exterior will go up by $250,000. So it's just within account 6313 changing which capital asset has the funding, and then changing the current Lower Lake Town Hall title to B&G roof. That's all that would be changed.
Correct.
Okay. I saw the hand up. So I'm going to bring this up again. I brought it up last year. some investment in the board chambers, some upgrades, improvements. I have spoken with CAO Parker and Director Ewing about this. There could possibly be some IT upgrades that may need to happen, but now that we have seen what's happening over in the lobby of admin, and we can see great improvements, and our focus is now on economic development and bringing investors in, I'm going to bring the idea up again that that we allocate some funds for renovation or improvement of the chambers. So I will pass this over to Susan.
Yes, I just want to mention that we've gotten nothing but compliments. And we're not done yet, but nothing but compliments from strangers walking by, other electeds and other city managers, and just visitors alike. So I think it's just a good example of what a little, I'm not going to say lipstick, but with a little work. And I know it was a lot more work than you initially thought, Lars, because once you move a wall, things reappear. That it might be something that this board may wish to pursue. I don't have an amount, but we can start taking a look at it and bring it back to the board if it's something that this board wishes to pursue. And again, there's no commitment, but we can take a look at pricing something out and getting some ideas.
And bringing it back in September.
And bringing it back to the board.
And if I could comment that it is very challenging to do projects in here. It's not just the board Tuesdays that we have to work around. It's weddings. And granted, we could look to block it out, but in a perfect world, it's construction, right? You can shut down a road and you can get it done quickly. But if you have to do traffic control, it takes a long time. So it won't be without bumps and bruises. I'm not looking to balk at doing the work. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that this room in particular is a challenge to do projects. We've recently done some, and it's effective, but it'll cause some bumps, but we can make it work.
Depends what the cost is.
I'll put something together. I'll work with IT. I'm not privy to the IT upgrades that are being recommended. So certainly Shane will need to be clued in there, so we can coordinate to put together a project scope and have it back here for final. Does that sound okay? All right.
Consensus to bring it back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I could just add, so the legislature, like they're going through a big renovation. They're going to tear down basically the lawmaker offices and build a whole new wing. So they're actually staging somewhere else. So I hear what you're saying. This would be complicated if there was traffic control. When you do bring it back, it could be as, you may consider as one alternative, whether there be an alternative meeting location for a few months while you're busy in here.
That would be great for us. That way we own it. But as in the builders own it. But we'll work together on that.
Yeah, we will.
Okay. Anything else on this item?
I think the next one would be 1781.
So budget unit 1781 is special projects. This budget unit is used primarily for, just like the title says, special projects involving other departments. This is a general fund budget unit financed primarily by one-time discretionary revenues, with some carried over from prior years. Specifically, revenues include PEG franchise fees and rental fees from Harbor Village. This budget unit provides a small amount of funding for Lamson Field infrastructure match and for lease of the pilot lounge, internet, etc. For that, with that, there aren't a lot of changes. We do also pay for code enforcement officer out of here and a few other. This is where this is the last stop for the aquatic weeds if the other funding sources don't come through. And there are a few capital assets in this budget unit, and I will turn it over to Lars for those ones like Lucerne dredging.
Okay. Lucerne Harbor dredging, that's a project that has been on, and by the way, I do have dates, as was, I believe, requested yesterday, about when certain projects came initially on as initial appropriation years. I didn't highlight that for 1778. I'd be happy to provide. Most of those were last fiscal year. There were a few that were carryovers from previous years. This one, Lucerne Harbor dredging, is one that was initially in fiscal year 20 and has carried on. And I can tell you that we are nearing the end. Permits are in progress, and they have been in progress for quite a while. We have county lakebed permit is done, state fish and wildlife permit is in hand, Army Corps permit is complete and determined to not be necessary after a lengthy review. Caltrans encroachment permit is in progress and not likely to be too involved. The one that is still to be worked through is the Water Quality Control Board permit. We had, because the Army Corps of Engineers permit was not necessary, it triggered a change in the water quality permit process, let's just put it that way. So now, rather than going as a rider on the Army Corps permit, now it's a standalone water quality permit. So getting into the weeds there a bit, but that has largely been the delay. As a result of that, we have to make modifications to a previously prepared sampling and analysis plan, do additional soil characterization, and prepare a dredge operations plan. So all those are in progress, and the work schedule in the Fish and Wildlife permit is that work is limited to October 15th through December 31st to protect the hitch, unless the area is dry, in which case we can request a work variance with Fish and Wildlife based on the water level now. We don't anticipate it to be dry outside of that window, so we're certainly pushing to meet that October 15 to December 31 work window. And based on where we are in the permit and the design, I anticipate that we can get there.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Lars. Want to make sure, I'm glad you gave some of that the other information as well, because it kind of takes care of some of my questions. But I just wanted to highlight some things, because in the town halls, you give me these updates, and it's great because I give them to them. And they commonly ask for like definite dates and things like that. And obviously, you've given the report that says they're dependent upon permits, RFPs, and then now the window dates. The other thing is, a lot of times they ask, like, what can we do to make this move faster? Or what can the board do to make it move faster? And I've been trying to say, like, look, I can't bring it as an item to the board because it's not going to make it happen any faster. We're waiting on the state, basically, and the permits, because we, as county, has brought it to where it needs to be. Is that accurate?
Well, it's accurate. I mean, at any given point, there would be interaction back and forth between the state. I don't mean to sit here and say, that the state is the delay. No, the state process or any permitting agency's process is inherently a time, well, it adds time to the project, some of them more than others. And by a couple of years ago, made the decision to not put this out to to not hire a design firm to do to manage the full project, because it was a cost of about $250,000 just for someone to do project management. So I took that on as a cost savings measure, and so the majority of the work has been done here, and trying to save the money. Now, would we have met the completion line had we hired a consultant? Potentially. They would have that the time and probably more experience, certainly with dredging projects, but it would have come at a cost, and that cost would have largely eaten up the money that we have for the dredging itself, not just the soft costs, so to speak, of design and environmental studies. So it's been done at the staff level, which takes additional time. So I'm not going to sit here and wait with the state.
Well, and there's a process, because you have you wait the 30 days for comment. You cannot, if you submit it earlier, you still have to wait for the extra times and dates. The other thing is that the situation with cultural artifact that that slowed it down as well. And so even if you did have the contractor, that still was another delay that took place. So I just want to make sure that all of this is out there, while we discuss this again, because I know I've given, the updates at the town halls, but this is where we are, and I just wanted to make sure that, we're on the same page with, the community at times thinks that we can push things faster than, because, we're the board, we just need 2 other people to agree. If that was the case, it'd be done, so I just wanted to, get some of that out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's anything else.
Just real quick, I hope this is laying the tracks so that when you have to do this again, it can hopefully simplify the process in understanding the process, because I think there's other areas that could potentially use some of this same type of dredging. And so I'm looking forward to see this getting completed and hoping that it can help expedite other ways that we can do this somewhere else.
It has, and I mean, for me personally, but also for the department professionally, and not just on the dredging portion of it, but the whole process to include the tribal consultation, the environmental studies up front. There's a lot of things that this has proven, and I mean, I think it's a great project. It has come with learning lessons, but I don't think that it's been anything where it's created any antagonistic feelings along the way, other than the time associated with getting it done. So unless there's any other questions on that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd like to extend on that because on Tuesday we were talking about one of the many projects approved by Blue Ribbon Committee. Another project that was included did involve dredging and some extension of boat ramps. So I'm a little confused at this point where the heavy lift would come or if it would be a combined effort. So certainly looking forward to when we hear more from Blue Ribbon Committee, what they're up to. Love to hear more from Water Resources. But the way I read the project as it was initially scoped, if it were to come forward here today, would be multiple dredging projects and some ramp extensions. So would that typically end up in a special project thing? Would that fall under a Water Resources thing? And the reason I'm asking is for the same thing you're asking about. Whoever's going to be doing it, whoever's on first, it's going to be a complicated project or set of projects with maybe some extended timelines. So, did this land? Is this a one-off that this special project ended under your domain versus, say, Water Resources, something like that? I just want to anticipate in advance when that particular project comes back, wherever it comes back, how it's actually going to be implemented and executed.
A quick question to be sure that I'm understanding correctly. You're talking about the boat ramp extensions. Is that what I heard you say?
It was a combo project as it was pitched and approved by Blue Ribbon Committee. It was dredging, number one, to get some navigation channels, and I guess I'm told that's kind of prerequisite to maybe scoping and designing an extension project. But to me, they're part and parcel. Number one, for CEQA, if there's any CEQA stuff, we can't be piecemealing it. But I believe it was kind of a twofer. It was a dredging project along our main boat ramps, and then, as we know from the drought, they need to be extended. So, and if you don't know the answer, I'm going to guess that this is a one-off, and so it could be handled under special projects, or it could be handled under their umbrella, or some combination thereof. I don't know.
The boat ramp extensions is certainly something that Public Works and Public Services have discussed and collaborated on. Public Works has kind of taken the lead on that. And are there things that I've learned through this project that would apply, certainly, and possibly Public Works or even Water Resources? I don't know the status of that, so I'll follow up with them. Where it would be housed, it could be in 1781. It also could be in 7011 if it's at a park. So the location of it, I think, that's an administrative issue. But who's the manager of it? At this point, I'll need to coordinate with Public Works and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about the dredging. I don't want to say that simply because it's a dredging project or in the lake that it goes through the same process that this project went through. There's a lot of nuances with each of the permitting agencies, but certainly lessons learned on this I would think would apply to these others if I'm involved.
We all learn from each other too.
One other project on here, the only other one, and it's not one that I put on, so I'm going to have to ask this department storage facility. I'm not familiar with that. Yeah.
That is actually a carryover from when we were planning on changing part of the ag building where air quality was to create a storage unit, since underneath the DA is getting full. So it was either to put in the correct kind of sprinkler system, which is not water, under the DA, or to build, and it has never come out or hasn't been, we haven't pushed it with the public services. There's too many other projects that have come to the forefront.
Has it been re-requested that it's a necessary build-out? Or have we done some sort of purging of records or purging of,
Something is needed because under the DA is still very full. So we either need to move that to a better facility that won't, if a fire happens, there's suppression, or put suppression there. We've just never put pressure on Lars, but that is actually still a need.
And if I could comment on that, with that explanation, it's something that I have been aware of, not intimately involved with, because it hasn't come to the forefront. But knowing that that's what it is, if I could suggest that we keep it on here, flush it out for final to determine if it's something that we should, because I don't know enough about it other than to know that there is the need, but it's not scoped out. So I'd like an opportunity to do that.
pressure applied?
All right.
Okay.
You have enough projects.
Well, and I will just put this out there, not to belabor this here, but with the number of projects that we have, you can anticipate an additional position request or requests of some new positions. I need to develop them, but essentially a capital projects manager. It used to be that most of the projects in public services were not managed by public services, and you've heard me say that before, and it doesn't change. But if we can get some positions filled, we can continue with project delivery and improve that project delivery. So just a forewarning, if nothing else, that the request would be coming through admin and HR. So that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Lars.
Thank you.
Are we moving on?
Thank you, Lars.
I believe Bruno has an item that he wished to discuss under this item.
Correct. There's at least
Lobbyist?
2 on this one, just so you know.
What?
Here's the lobbyist time.
Oh, the lobbyist.
Now, you said it was on your radar. Were you planning to present something, or were you planning
not
to stop
presentation,
and
that-
ask?
Special project?
What we're doing right now.
So just a brief story. Chair Pyska and myself were in Sacramento at a CSAC conference, and we met with some other folks who had lobbyists with them that were there. We took interest and started asking, so what does it cost? Because in our minds, it was out of this world cost. The cost was between, I mean, it could be anything you want depending on how much you ask for them, but it could be between $30,000 to $50,000 with a couple of specific items that you want them to focus on, to lobby, to work with our representatives with, to keep track of certain bills, let us know when we need to take action, so on and so forth. We are not in Sacramento on a constant basis. Obviously, there's also the opportunity of being in DC. I think we should probably look at starting in Sacramento and getting benefit of having a lobbyist. There is a monthly meeting that CSAC puts together that all of the lobbyists meet with CSAC so that everyone can understand what CSAC is focusing on and CSAC can understand what every county is focusing on. Every partner that we talk to or colleague that we talk to, there is financial benefits more so than the cost of the lobbyist that is in Sacramento. So wanted to put it out there as maybe doing an RFP, looking at what the possibility would be, but something that we don't have that we can definitely benefit from.
Yes, and to follow up with that, you can hire a lobbyist, but if you don't have someone internally to manage the process, then it's ineffective. But our CAO has been building that out in anticipation of this, so I will just pass it to you.
Oh, yes.
we're still at the board level, right? Let me make a comment here.
Oh, so sorry.
I've been asking for a lobbyist for 6 years. At this diocese, every year we do the budget, we are missing out. Lobbyists do all the work. You know, you pick the right one, and we need a state and a federal lobbyist. We need someone who does both. Now, I know a lot of lobbyists over in Sacramento, you know, so I'm glad the board is having this conversation. I'm glad you guys have had those conversations. It is absolutely inherent that Lake County get a lobbyist. Those numbers are pretty low, though, whoever you were talking to, because I know, we worked with the lobbyists, been very successful with it on a tribal side for 25 years. First thing I did was get a lobbyist. You can't be at the state and the federal level every day. These folks are there. So I think that, yeah, I'm glad we're having the conversation, but I want the board to understand it's probably going to be a little more than that. I think $100,000 is more in the range. You may not spend it this year or you're doing it, but that will come back 10 times, if not 100, put in the right work and the right conversations as we're doing. So no more conversation for me besides yes.
Well, agreed, yeah. Well, I think it was starting on the low end, you know, one
One or two issues.
One or two
type of thing.
issues and then building up. But the structure, is it okay if I pass it to her?
Yeah, I'm just, I'm glad we're having this
Yeah.
time.
No,
the
it's-
growth of Lake
we've all
County
been
to
talking about it
understand
individually,
it.
yep.
You know, it was really disappointing when I came on the board to hear, you know, we just focused on, well, you can't just focus on the county. We got to focus from the federal to the state level, funnel it down to make sure we're having those conversations and we're in the right rooms when we're not there to follow up on it, because constantly, you know, like I said, lobbyists are key. Yes, you got to make sure they're focused in the right direction, but I'm glad we're having the conversation, because Lake County, we've done a great job. We're there, present. You know, it's always, well, Lake County needs representation. We're getting there, but this lobbyist is just going to be that next link in the chain to make sure we go from wherever we're at right now. I'm going to say we're like 56. I don't know what our rating is out of the counties, but I'm saying we're moving up the ladder to get us into that top 10 range. So I'm excited about it. This is clearly understand it. I know it. Yeah, you know, it really is. And if you get the right one that really understands truly who we are, and I think talking to our state representatives, our federal representatives, but there are a lot out there that are really interested in what we're doing, because we're a very unique place. So I'm excited. I'm absolutely.
Look at that.
I don't get excited about too much
She's
stuff.
excited
I'm really
too.
I'm just waiting.
She's excited too.
sorry.
That's okay. So over the course of probably the last 6 months or so, if you notice, Matthew's header or title has included legislative affairs now, and we've made efforts to get him involved. I handed him the federal community funding project. He's gone down to Sacramento. He's building those relationships that we need so he could be our internal manager of the legislative affairs, because you have to do annual setting of the agendas and projects you want pursued. Also, I was thinking that I could put a scope together to get a feel from the board. How expansive do you want this? Is it this narrow or this narrow? So I can bring that back to the board probably in July in preparation for the September meeting.
So not add anything now,
No,
add it in
I
September?
was just waiting.
And, well, if you need some direction as to scope, I'll be the outlier here.
I don't need it now. I'm going to look at different things and give you samples to pick. I'm just recognizing what time it is.
Yep.
And then bring it back to the board in July for further discussion with samples and maybe cost estimates as to how much this scope costs and how much this scope costs, and do we include federal and state or just begin with state? Those are my thoughts.
Yes.
No, that's a conversation to help get exactly where we want to be.
Consensus?
And I would like to, at this time, put a placeholder for 100K in
That's what I was
preparation
going
for
to
this
offer as
discussion.
well.
thank you, because then we can do something with it.
That's what I know. Yes. I was just waiting to hear from the whole board.
I couldn't hear all the nods. Is there 3 nods?
Yeah.
I have no doubt you have consensus to move forward with this. I am going to be the outlier. I think one reason people have trouble trusting governments is they feel they are beholden to special interests who all have lobbyists. And my first exposure to lobbyists who actually lobby on behalf of government comes from my experience in cannabis advocacy. And when governments use lobbyists, sometimes they have very clear aims, and it's very clear to differentiate that they're working on behalf of all of their citizens. On some issues, it's less clear that they are actually serving all of their citizens, or if they're kind of taking sides on some political issues. I urge caution and judicious use of lobbyists. I think can be effective in highlighting local issues of importance. I think they can also bring some adherence to some of the professional rules of standard and conduct that go with lobbying. 100K is probably a reasonable starting point, knowing where such things go. I'm going to be interested in seeing the scope of services. I'm going to definitely be interested in seeing how that lobbyist would work in developing, taking guidance from this board as a whole and applying it in their day-to-day activities in Sacramento.
I think you need to see it more as advocacy for Lake County, and your description of a lobbyist sounds like the description of this board. We make decisions that doesn't always fulfill the needs of 100% of the residents that we serve. We're trying to make the best decisions with the information that we have, with the vision of where we're going with it. So I think as long as we're in control, that's what counts, and that's typically how it works. So.
And we can continue this discussion in July.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving.
Not so
Not so fast?
There is one last item that needs to be talked about in Budget Unit 1781, and this is from this month's board meeting. The JPA, $28,000 for entering the cannabis JPA would be in this budget unit as well, and I assume that would be paid from cannabis funds.
Yeah.
And if we are for that, it would be, you know what, at the end of admin, I have a list going, I'll just name them all off again. So we'll move to the next one.
I thought that one was in our Board of Supervisors in special contracts or services, so I'm glad you brought it up because I had made an assumption.
That would only be if it was someone's discretionary revenue used. Is it supposed to be Supervisor Green's discretionary revenue, not just
I
cannabis?
think it was a
tax?
board decision, so I think it needs to be a
So it's
a board
separate from that.
cost.
I agree.
So this is 1781?
If you really want it in 1011, that's fine, but there's no reason to put it in there. That's a special project if I've heard of one.
Oh, I'm waiting for
Are we ready now?
Yes.
Yes. I'll be presenting the next 4 items.
Okay.
And I will be brief. Budget Unit 1794, CDBG Program Income, page D-59. This is where, for an instance, interests that we accrue are placed up to $35,000 in the general fund. Once it exceeds $35,000, it is then moved into the next Budget Unit 1796. And this is basically I don't know what you want to call it. It's
Well, this budget unit slightly changed. This is where all of the revolving loans, this is where the revolving loans are going to be captured, so it will be over $35,000 a year for a long time now, to where it will be stored there, and then as needed to re-up a new loan in budget unit 1891, where we contract with CDS to do the loans.
That's okay. Any questions or comments regarding this budget unit?
Just one question. If it's possible to get a list of all the loans that are outstanding, if there's any that are defaulted or anything like that?
I think so, yes.
All.
defaults? Oh, no, we don't have any defaults.
It's possible, I
Just say
wanna-
status, that way people don't get the wrong impression.
I can share with you that as of last year, this past fiscal year, we have issued awarded 6 loans to small businesses for an amount totaling $705,000. No defaults.
You, man.
I was going to wait till 1891 to say that, but
Okay.
I thought I'd get it out of the way now. May I move on?
Yes.
Okay, Budget Unit 1891, CDBG-PI-Business Relief Fund. Did I skip one? I think I did. Let me back up. Budget Unit 1796, where the program income goes into this fund for capital funds. This is Cobb Water. We, applause, finally closed out that project on May 1st. So this will go away. It'll be 0 for future large projects. Budget Unit 1891, CDBG-PI-Business Relief, as you may, page D63. As you may recall, we have been applying for CDBG loans, CB1, CB2, CB3, and the annual CDBG grants for business technical assistance and enterprise loans. And I already gave you the update on how many we issued and how much was awarded to date as of the past fiscal year. We do have some remaining funding that we will be reaching out to other businesses to see if they are still interested in these loans.
Will Ben be doing that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe eventually, but I'm going to let him get his work plan in place. I already mentioned it to him. I said, oh, by the way, CDBG is yours as soon as you're ready.
Where's fellow?
Thank you for the question. Budget Unit 1892, Marketing and Economic Development, page D-65. This is the portion of the monies that we share with TID. We did get one dream request for $30K that we received from Ms. Steele. I think you received that. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. I do want to mention that this has been building over time, not a lot, but slowly building, but this is another one of those funding sources that Ben will be able to utilize for smaller projects and marketing. Any questions or comments?
Yes to 30,000.
I agree. That's a great program, right? It's going to, mixing it up right now.
One team, one dream.
One team, one dream. There you go. I think it's a great program. A lot of the new businesses around the lake participate. I think it's a good program. I completely support the 30,000 for that also.
Everybody? Everybody?
Yes.
I can't
Okay,
tell.
the other side is we have to lower something by 30,000. It's just not extra money out there. So the one we would lower is probably 2380 Economic Development Services. That is currently at 137,250. That would be for Ben. That's the only place we can really go, and we would lower it by 30,000.
Since there will be newfound carry fund over
There is other
balance in
locations now.
September, then by the time this comes back to us, there may not need to be a change to that item. I'm learning.
Okay.
Those are my 4 items, unless you have any questions or comments regarding those.
No, I think it's a good thing.
Do you need a motion for the 30?
Not yet. I have a serious list
The
going.
list, all right.
All right, spinning it through.
Give me a millisecond to put it on the list so it doesn't get lost, though, but if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Are we doing geothermal next?
Geothermal's next, and it's me, and I need my brain a second. I apologize. Okay. Geothermal, Budget Unit 1918, found on page D78. This budget unit is used to account for geothermal resource royalty payments received from both the federal and state government. This is a non-general fund revenue source. The portion of these revenues received from the state are commonly referred to as AB 1905 funds and have some restrictions related to mitigation or trying to mitigate effects of geothermal. The funding from the federal source does not have those same strings attached. So moving into the uses, the two main that I want to bring up is there's $1 million for Cobb area projects. That is in account 8123, so that's transferring over to, I believe, Parks. And the other large item that is not normal every year activity is there is $785,000 in the federal geothermal mitigation revenues, which is for Supervisor Simon and PISCA related to mitigation up on Cobb/Middletown area. Everything
Springs, more directly right below it, yeah.
Everything else is in line with normal, $100,000 for Middletown Patrol Services. And I don't know that I need to go any further because it'd be too much detail.
It's fine.
Keep it going.
Yep. Next.
Very good, great. That's me. I will be doing the next three items. Budget Unit 2101, Trial Courts, page D-84. The purpose of this is to receive revenues from the collection of court-imposed fines and fees. A part of it is paid to the state. The remaining amount is paid to the county for maintenance on the fourth floor, mailroom services, and anything else related to that. Any questions or comments?
Next.
Okay. Next unit is Budget Unit 2106, Grand Jurors, page D-86. This is the mandated function that the County General Fund is required to finance. You'll notice there is a slight increase, and that has to do with travel, transportation, and jury and witness expense. Any questions or comments?
I would say that's based on our latest approvals of the changes. Yeah.
Yes. Budget Unit 2111, Public Defender. Pursuant to state and federal law, as you know, we have to provide legal representation to indigent defendants. We are going through a transition at this moment. We have flown the Chief Public Defender position and have already received applications. We will, as this transition moves forward, we will be coming back to the board with possible additional requests for personnel as the office is being built. I am actually meeting with Jose Varela and Carlos Torres tomorrow. I'm so...
You had a long day.
Tomorrow, to discuss, we're developing a 6-month work plan for that person once they come on board to help with the onboarding of that position. In addition, we have developed a set of questions for both this board and a subject matter expert panel to vet the applications before they come to the board. Any questions or comments?
It looks lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Next up is Budget Unit 2115, which is the Domestic Violence Program. This budget unit collects funds from marriage license fees and domestic violence fines. In turn, the county contracts with Lake Family Resource Center, or LFRC, to provide crisis intervention shelter care for local victims of domestic violence. So the long and short is everything we receive in a year, we pass through over to LFRC for those services, and that is the entire budget unit. Questions?
Yeah, marriage license fees? Is that a statutory thing?
Correct. This is not county choice, no.
Is marriage is the primary contributor to domestic violence? What is that? I don't know. It's a weird linkage.
I would have to talk to.
Okay.
Next up is Budget Unit 2305, Criminal Justice Program Facilities. Give me a second. This budget unit accounts for funds allocated to the Criminal Justice Facilities Temporary Construction Fund pursuant to state law and Board of Supervisors resolution. The funding in this budget unit consists of a portion of court-imposed fines, which are allocated for purposes of maintaining and operating courthouse and criminal justice facilities. These are non-discretionary revenues, and everything that we receive gets transferred over to Budget Unit 2301, which is jail. Questions? Issues? Next up is Budget Unit 7999, which is contingencies. This one is just that. There is one line item, and it is contingencies. It helps with cash flow during the course of the fiscal year, as well as if anything happens where funding isn't coming in properly, et cetera, it can be, the board can remove money from the contingencies to put there. This is kind of a good, you need to have this section. And that's all there is to that one. That's the overall contingencies.
Such great change.
Next up, you need to give me a second because I can only go so fast. I need to find it in my system. Apologize. It's all the way near the end. Budget Unit 8826, redevelopment obligations. The purpose of this budget unit is to repay the housing loan and general fund loans made by the county to the former redevelopment agency, with 80% of those payments going to the general fund, 20% going to the next budget unit, which is 8894, redevelopment housing successor agency. And those funds, the 20% is held until there is a housing project within that budget unit, 8894.
And we had the Collier project that we did, we're
This is,
working on.
Yeah, we didn't use that funding for Collier because I didn't feel that since we forgave the previous amount, that it should be offered to them. Yeah. However, I think with our future housing projects that we'll be able to utilize it ASAP.
Good.
so that actually takes care of both those budget units, because 8826 is just where the payment goes to general fund, and 8894. And that is the last one for admin, so any questions before? There is one already next to me, so never mind.
It's not a question, that's a comment. One, I forgot to mention that CDBG, the NOFAs will be coming out here shortly. We'll come before the board with a list of possible projects. That's going to be Ben's first foray into CDBG land.
Great.
Secondly, I have failed to mention, and I just feel horrible because I've been rushing to thank the assistance of Christine Hutt, Sarah Schuchart, Shannon Heenan, Leisha Phillips, and of course this gentleman sitting next to me for all the hard work.
Superman, good job.
I cannot let it go. Sarah Schuchart, Christine Hutt, and Leisha Phillips picked up a lot more than normal this budget cycle because of interim behavioral health. And I am very appreciative for that. It has turned into a very well-rounded budget. All right, enough mushy.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. You have such a solid team in admin. Okay.
Now the list.
Public
No.
input.
comment first.
Who do we have in the Zoom room? Did anyone have a hand up? No. Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board for action, and I think that will be supported with a list in a motion. Yes.
Just want to make, one comment too. You say enough with the mushy. I just want to thank all the directors, department heads, admin, this board, for moving forward. I want to say thank you. This is a grueling grueling process, but it's one that we're put into place to do to make sure we move the county forward. And the work that all of our employees, directors, everyone had a part of this, just moving us forward. I just want to say thank you, because we don't move forward without you. We get to sit up here and make these decisions, but once again, all of our directors, all the way down, thank you. That's all I could say.
And you're right, and thank you for bringing that up. And I also I said it last night, but I want to say it again, we had an incredible amount of new directors this year who did a wonderful job, and, yeah, you did great, everybody. Thank you. Okay, what's the motion?
So here's the amendment piece of the motion.
So we'll get to that in a minute. I move to approve budgets 1011, 1012, 1014, 1072, 1120, 1124, 1341, 1778, 1781, 1794, 1796, 1891, 1892, 1918, 2101, 2106, 2111, 2115, 2305, 7999, 8826, 8894, 9917, 9918, with the following amendments.
Budget Unit 1011, account 8122, increased by $250,000. Budget Unit 1011, account 2380, increased by $250,000 for BOS discretionary cannabis revenues. BU 1120, negative $100,000 in account 8123, which is an ARPA transfer to Budget Unit 6022 for the bookmobile. Budget Unit 1781, $100,000 in account 28-30 for a lobbyist, and that is going to be FBA, General Fund. Budget Unit 1781, $28,000 in account 2830 for cannabis JPA membership. If it's going to be membership, we'll switch it to 20, account 20. We'll see where that goes. And Budget Unit 1781, $28K, 8122, which is a transfer in from Budget Unit 1072. Budget Unit 1892, $30,000, increase account 2830 for One Team One Dream contribution. I was trying not to say donation. Budget Unit 1892, decrease, so negative $30,000 in account 23-80, lower the economic development line item. Budget Unit 1072, decrease by, so negative $250,000 in 8123 for BOS discretionary to Budget Unit 1011. Budget Unit 1072, negative $28,000, account 81-23 to Budget Unit 1781 for the cannabis JPA. Budget Unit 1778, capital asset changes only, court exterior title instead of court annex. Increase that appropriation by $250,000 in account 6313. Also in Budget Unit 1778, account 6313, lower the courthouse roof capital assets by the same $250,000. Lastly, Budget Unit 1778, title change of capital asset from Lower Lake Town Hall to B&G roof, which is also in 63-13.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and then we need to do the budget as a whole? Or is that, looking at the other actions?
There's
And I
more.
can't remember.
Yes, the
The resolution or something?
approved by motion, the full recommended budget, is that the one?
Yeah.
So I'll motion to approve by the FY 2023-2024 recommended budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I offer the resolution.
The resolution's been offered.
Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier,
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall,
Yes.
Supervisor Green, and Supervisor Pyska.
Yes.
Thanks.
See how useful that headset would have been? It would have been so much quicker.
And
then
then
the
we have to
C?
do C.
So I'm motion,
We have one more motion.
is it, so I motion, I motion to authorize the purchase of certain capital assets prior to approval of the adopted budget.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, is that it? Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
No, it's not, is it? I'm just kidding.
I have a whole other item.
Everybody look.
Wait.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Genevieve. Good job. Okay, Michael, you've been initiated.
How I felt for the majority.
I know.
I've been initiated other places. This was something else.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. I thought you were going to give me a guideline on that.
No, it's fine.
Okay.